the ultimate testament of how difficult it is to bet against this market. We were down as much as 5% from all-time highs back in late October, ultimately to reverse and end November higher. So really T2V is saying that now is not the time to be betting against stocks. Simply, the economy is just too strong.
It's interesting, you know, my buddy Bob Sloan from S3 Partners, he says people hedging these stocks don't necessarily hate the companies, but it's the only way to hedge this market. I wonder what 22V would say. I mean, do you have to be long?
It's not necessarily that you have to be long. It's just that betting against the strength of the equities has not fared well for anyone who is doing that. Marko Kolanovic on Twitter posted something really interesting. He said that now feels like a market where bears aren't excited about selling and bulls aren't excited about buying, especially given the lack of kind of catalyst that we've had with no economic data. We're awaiting the Fed meeting. So there needs to be something to make people excited to go in one direction or the other.
All right, Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Alexander Semenova wrote that story on the Bloomberg side. Let's bring in back Morgan Stanley CIO and Chief U.S. Equity Strategist Mike Wilson. And, you know, when she mentioned Marco, I thought of you. I used to think of the two of you together, right? You were the two biggest bears on Wall Street. Go back to, you know, the inflection point. What changed your view? Because now you're one of the biggest bulls on Wall Street.
Well, it's just flexibility. I mean, it's funny how you get a reputation. You know, you go from biggest bull to biggest bear, and we've had that over the last 10 years, quite frankly. So it's not new for us. I mean, we're happy to go either way, depending on where our work shows. Most recently, in the last year, what's really changed for us is the earnings revisions, okay? So like this year, it looks much different. The earnings revision breadth is tremendous. I mean, that's the story, and I think that's the story that most people are still missing. And everybody's focused on valuations. Like, look, valuations are okay if earnings are going to beat on the upside. And that's our call for 2026, is that we're seeing a broadening out in the earnings story. And we should see a broadening out in the equity story as a result of that. So we're very disciplined around our work. I mean, whether it's sentiment or positioning or, you know, valuation or earnings revisions, I mean, we look at everything, Matt. And I think it's just, you know, at this point in time, it looks pretty supportive from a policy standpoint, from an earnings revision standpoint, and in valuation, you grow into it.
I think, though, this gets back to what you were talking about before the break of why we would get Fed cuts, what the catalyst would be. Because I think a lot of people struggle with this idea that the economy is in a place that it has to have cuts. And at the same time, corporate America is doing really well. Is there not tension in that?
Well, there is, but here's the story. So most of corporate America is not doing well. Okay, just like most Americans have been suffering for the last 3 or 4 years for one important reason. Rates are too high for the average economic participant. This is why the market has been narrow. This is why we have the K economy. Okay, so I think the Fed understands that in order to kind of get the real economy moving again, get high velocity transactions moving in the real economy, rates need to be lower. Now, they need to be a little bit careful with that because it could create a bubbly type situation for stocks. But I mean, what we don't want to do is we don't want to see the government or policy crowd out a recovery that is very nascent for many parts of the economy right now.
Where is the market most wrong, or where would you have your highest concerns in terms of what happens next year? I mean, is that running too hot? Your biggest worry, inflation?
Yeah, so on the positive side, I think people are too bearish on the consumer. I hear it all the time, the consumer, you know, they're in real trouble. Some consumers are in real trouble, which is why they need relief with rates, okay? And there's going to be relief on fiscal next year on taxes, about $150 billion of benefit from the big, beautiful bill for that sort of middle income consumer. So I think people are too bearish on the consumer. I think that's where we're going to be surprised, particularly in the first half of next year. On the other side, I would say, yeah, inflation. I think the strategy of running it hot will come back to bite us probably sooner than people think. So if people buy into our call that a new economic cycle began in April, most people would say, well, that should last 4, 5, 6 years. I don't think so.
Well, just to that point, quickly, Mike, before we head to the break, I mean, 2026 is going to be a midterm year. We've already seen this administration pivot to focus on affordability. What sort of risk does that inject into this?
It's a big risk for later next year. I don't think that's a risk in the first half of next year. So once again, we're going to stay flexible. We may be here a year from now, you may be saying, why are you so bearish? I don't know. I mean, like my point is, this is a time not to get married to anything for more than, I would say, 6-month view. So 6-month view is kind of a sweet spot right now.
And that in itself is telling. Mike, staying with us, that is Mike Wilson of Morgan Stanley. Coming up.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. We're also simulcasting on X Spaces. If you have a question, please go to X Spaces on my Twitter or on my X feed and ask the question. You can also type the question in the chat. This is an interactive show. We're going to go over the market and some of the news. Sometimes it's breaking news. Sometimes it's a slow day. We never know. This show is unscripted. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work by sharing the links and asking your social media to follow me. Also, if you like the free content that I provide, I have thousands of videos for free. Please donate on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You could be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack channel. I don't put anything behind a paywall. Everything that I produce for these news streams are for free. So please help support the work that I do. In addition, I have great products. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material in immunology and pulmonology on my website. So let's just talk about some of the great products that I have to help improve your health and wellness. Go to my store and get the Max 35. Max 35 is 35 parts per million, or Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points, but you take it the same way and it does basically the same thing. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or so, and then swallow it. This will help to boost up your immune system by improving your oral cavity, improving your oral pharynx, which is the back of your throat, improving your mucosal barrier, and improving the health of your epithelial cells, especially in the oral pharynx. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. This is super important to take every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years, teaspoon a day, every day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. It helps to boost up the immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Especially take it during the winter and the fall and the winter season. So also I have very high quality structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in lavender or in peppermint, charcoal tea tree, and lemongrass. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps, perfect for skin health. Get a few bars for your household. You can use them as even gifts because we're in the holiday season now. Maybe you want to help someone along and trying to improve their health. So go to my store and get some very high quality supplements. If you follow what I have to say during this show, what you're going to start to notice is that there is a way to stack these supplements and health products where it'll slow down the aging process and boost up the immune system. With that said, let's go back to Bloomberg.
It's Mike Wilson. Mike, so 7,800 is the call for U.S. stocks for next year. How much of that, though, is U.S. beating out the world versus the rest of the world doing even better?
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, the rest of the world can do better. I mean, we've had this call for 3 years. We've been in this sort of rolling recession, non-participatory kind of recovery. And that's the same story for the rest of the world, right? The rest of the world hasn't really been recovering since COVID either. So we're seeing, Chinese market's doing much better. India had a tough year this year relative. It's fine. I think that's a market that can come back. And in Latin America, as we kind of coordinate maybe this Western Hemisphere connection, Latin America looks quite a bit better. So I think foreign stocks will have a better year. It doesn't mean they beat the U.S., but they can keep up. The real story for next year, though, I want to make this clear. It's not about the S&P target, okay? It's more about this broadening out. And that broadening out is contingent, though, on the Fed cutting more significantly and or providing more liquidity to both financial markets and the real economy needs as there's more capital spending. So there is this hurdle to get over. Okay, but that's, to me, that's the fat pitch. It's not just S&P, it's not just the AI trade, it's all these areas that have lagged.
Right, which is, when I look at the outperformance of the rest of the world, the strange thing is they don't have the AI play that we have, right? They don't have the Mag 7, and they continue to do better. We'll talk more about this. We got to go to a break right now. Mike Wilson is going to stay with us, though. Right now we're looking at futures rising into the cash trade, the opening bell on the other side of this break.
All right, let's play the Fox News about Hegseth setting the record straight on the boat strikes. All right, here we go.
First, let's go to Matt Rivera, who is live in Washington, D.C. with the very latest, and Maddie, that of course has to do with the situation involving Venezuela, which is top of mind for many on Capitol Hill today.
That's right, Carly and Tom. The White House says the president met with his national security team last night about Venezuela, as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle call into question the legality of these boat strikes. At issue is a Washington Post report that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth ordered a follow-on strike on an alleged drug boat on September 2nd, killing 2 survivors. The Post reported the second strike was conducted under Hegseth's initial order to kill them all. The White House is not denying a second strike occurred, claiming it was done in self-defense as they push forward with what they call an anti-drug trafficking campaign.
On September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
Hegseth was saying on X, let's make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, and has my 100% support. I stand by him in the combat decisions he has made on the September 2nd mission and all others since. All of this coming as the administration ramps up pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down.
What's the position on whether US troops on the ground is a possibility there? I know you've answered that before. What's the current position?
In Venezuela, I think my previous answer stands. There's many options at the president's disposal that are on the table.
The president confirmed over the weekend that he spoke with Maduro last week as the U.S. military builds up its presence in the Caribbean with about 12 warships and more than 15,000 troops.
All right, Matt Rivera, live for us in Washington. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in former State Department Deputy Special Envoy under President Trump, Ellie Cohen. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. This situation has quickly ramped up with this phone call between President Trump and Nicolas Maduro, where the president reportedly said leave the country, and Maduro agreed only under certain conditions that the president wasn't willing to grant. And we were initially told that our interaction with Venezuela had to do with fighting drug cartels and drugs from entering the country. It clearly appears to be more than just that. So starting at the beginning here, because the president doesn't do anything without America first in mind, what do you think his ultimate goal here is with this pressure campaign against Venezuela, and why?
Carly, you said it exactly right. When I look at the situation in Venezuela, what I see is an America First policy as it comes to national security being played out for the American people. And if you think about what the president promised on the campaign trail, he promised that we would act like a sovereign nation. We were going to defend our borders, and that's what the Trump administration has done incredibly within 10 months, right? We've stopped the flow of migration into the country.
Right now, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,833. My target for year end is 6,850 to about 6,900. Now, we just heard that a year-end target for next year is 7,800. I am not making that call yet. We're going to wait until we get into January. We're going to take a look at the price structure and then make a determination. So I'm not making any call for the end of next year, but the end of this year, I think it's going to be anywhere from 6,850 to 6,900. The natural gas futures are trading at 4.926. Oil's trading at $59 a barrel. VIX is trading at 16.78. And Bitcoin is trading at just under 89,000.
Now this is also protecting our sovereignty by taking the fight to where it comes from, which is Venezuela. Venezuela has become a hub of the drugs that are flooding our country, that are killing our children. I can't think of a single parent in this country, Carly, that is not terrorized by the thought of these drugs reaching our children. I can't think of a single community in America, whatever your zip code is, that hasn't been impacted by the drugs that Maduro and Venezuela have flooded our cities and towns with. And so this is an issue that touches every American.
And again, what we're seeing is an America First national security policy. We're seeing the president deliver on his promises to the American people. The most basic thing that any government promises people is to protect its citizens.
So, Ellie, why do you think Maduro has not yet taken this off-ramp offered by Donald Trump? I mean, it's not like Maduro has a military that can come even anywhere near close to our military. It's basically a bunch of ragtag individuals who cannot fight, who have outdated Soviet weapons. So why hasn't Maduro taken this offer?
Well, you have to understand that Maduro is a narco-terrorist, right? So you're not dealing with a rational world leader. And Maduro has been backed by Cuba, by China, by Russia. Now, I think that Maduro's allies are about to abandon him because nobody is going to take on the United States, just like you just said, Todd. So, I think that we're going to see this story develop very quickly. And what we're going to see is peace through strength. We're going to see that President Trump, again, is delivering on his promises to the American people when it comes to defending our homeland, when it comes to defending every town and every city in the country. And again, putting our adversaries on notice that when it's necessary, the president has the full disposal of the U.S. military might at his hands, and he can take action when he deems necessary. And I also want to make a point here, Todd, that
let me just interject. It's about time we have a president that actually is issuing a kinetic war against drugs. Now, the problem that we're having in the United States is a demand and a supply issue. So by knocking out the supply, we also have to deal with the demand. But having a kinetic means to orchestrate a war on drugs is the right policy. Now, people are saying there's also oil in Venezuela and raw earth metals and a geopolitical strategy to command the South America area for America First policy. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Why do we have people in the United States saying, you know what? People are saying in the United States, it's wrong to have projection of your power in South America. But it's okay to have China and Russia? No. Our backyard should be under our rule, not China's rule. Now, people need to understand that Venezuela, this is a stepping stone for the war in the Pacific. You have to command that area in South America. You have to command the area around Panama. You're going to have to make sure that you have freedom of navigation through Panama Canal. You need the rare earth metals. You need as much energy that you can command for a potential world war. So taking out Venezuela for the benefit of the United States, there's nothing wrong with that. And on top of it, you're stopping the drug running. So I'm 100% for absolutely destroying Venezuela. There's nothing wrong with making sure that we win in the Pacific. And anyone that thinks that this war against Venezuela is just about drugs, you're not paying attention. If you think that this is just about, having some sort of hegemonic power for energy, no. This is a stepping stone for the war in the Pacific. If you don't believe me, start paying attention to the problems that were starting to arise just before the United States became involved in World War II. Start researching what was going on in the energy sector, especially with Japan and as they were expanding their empire in Asia, and what FDR did in terms of embargoes. And then you start to realize that this move in Venezuela is the first piece of a larger strategy against China.
Legal right to do what he's doing right now. We're hearing a lot of noise from the Democrats that would mislead the American people. But let's remember that the Trump administration has, from its outset of coming back into office, they declared both Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization and now Cartel de Solis. And so what that means is the president is again within.
And all this drug running is just all this drug running that was taking place in infiltrating our country. This is the opium wars 2.0. All right. China was weakened because of the opium wars. And China is trying to weaken the United States as they move closer to taking control of the first island chains. If they take the first island chains, the United States has lost its hegemonic power and lost its freedom of navigation in the Pacific. Now, do you think that our great prosperity is going to be as good if we lose that freedom of navigation? If we lose that freedom of navigation, your way of life in the United States is going to radically change. And that's why this is happening.
As our commander-in-chief to take action as necessary unilaterally.
Yeah, and there was news that Russia sent a team of people to Caracas to try and support Nicolas Maduro and advise him during the situation, because the thinking is that if a pro-America government enters power in the country,
and I suspect what's happening is that, because I watch the energy sector pretty closely because I'm a very active energy trader. So what I'm noticing is that natural gas is starting to pop up. Now, yes, it's getting into near the end of the year and cold weather is coming and natural gas futures normally go up. It's trading at 4.9. Now, oil is trading below $59 a barrel right now. It's at 58.75. I think Trump got on the phone, talked to MBS, and basically said, MBS, hey, make sure that you have supply being pumped in the Brent crude market, because when they start striking once the United States starts striking Venezuela, potentially a land invasion, who knows? I doubt it's a land invasion, but we're going to start striking Venezuela. I wouldn't be surprised that it happens this week, maybe next week, but it may even happen tonight. It's probably going to start at night. All right, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. The energy sector is gonna pop. So Brent crude is gonna go up, probably about $4 a barrel. Now, how long this lasts? I suspect that the missiles and that first strike, the missiles and the bombers, so that so we have like a naval attack through shooting missiles, and then also Air Force going in and knocking out certain facilities. That's going to be within the first 24 hours. There's probably going to be a sustained hit, probably within 72 hours. Then it'll probably calm down. I think within that 72 hours, you're going to see oil pop maybe $4 or $5 a barrel. And probably what will happen is that natural gas will also pop, maybe $1 per million British thermal units. So I suspect that Trump talked to MBS to try to bring down oil price to buffer the pop that's going to happen when the attack hits. So if it's trading, when we hit possibly tonight, if we hit and it's trading at, let's say, $59 a barrel, you're probably looking at a $64 or $65 a barrel immediately during the hit. So for people that are watching the energy market, watch for this pop. I think it's going to happen.
Venezuela oil production, which would, take a dip in global sales and hurt Russian economy. So all of these countries are intertwined. And going to Russia, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin today. Caroline Levitt yesterday described this as shuttle diplomacy. It certainly appears to be that. Where do you think things stand right now when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war? And could this round of negotiations ultimately lead to a peace deal?
Carly, you know what we're seeing right now is how much President Trump and his administration are dedicated to diplomacy. This is going to be Steve Witkoff's sixth trip to Russia. He's going to Putin with a 19-point plan that was developed by Special Envoy Witkoff and a former senior advisor to the president, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, on the heels of their successful peace plan with Israel and Hamas. And this 19-point plan includes the input of both the Ukrainians, the Russians, even the Europeans. And so what, I think we can hope to expect is that Special Envoy Witkoff is going to deliver both carrots and sticks to Putin. The carrots are promises of greater economic development, and there's so much in it for Russia to bring this war to an end in terms of the peace and prosperity of his country. But on the other hand, I think Steve Witkoff is prepared to have some tough conversations with Putin behind closed doors. That could mean anything from increased U.S. sanctions, more military supply to the Ukrainians. All of that is.
And the reason why Trump wants to end the whole Ukrainian-Putin war is he doesn't want to have to deal with Europe and Asia at the same time. He needs it to ramp down. He needs to get Zelensky to buy in and Putin to buy into a peace plan so Trump can start getting ready against China.
And the thing about Steve Witkoff is that he is President Trump's trusted emissary. And when you're conducting diplomacy, it means a lot for Russian President Putin to know that Steve Witkoff has the president's complete trust and confidence, and that he's really been empowered to conduct this highest level of diplomacy. Now, I do think what we can expect is that if Special Envoy Witkoff is able to deliver that message, we will eventually need President Trump to step in, right? Because as we've seen, with 8 peace deals in 8 months, it eventually requires President Trump's sheer force of personality to get across the finish line.
You saw my eyes. That's where I was going. This is a key step, but the main step is getting Donald Trump in the room or at the table ending this war.
All right, we're going to go to a former NATO commander doing the prediction about possible land action in Venezuela. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. And when you detoxify your body regularly, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Your body will just perform better, and you'll have better brain function. All these toxins that start to build up in your body over time affects all these different organ systems. You want to get rid of these toxins. So Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water, do that every day. It's super simple. Go to my store, get the Zeolite. This is a great way to get healthy. In addition, drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods because it has a lot of chemicals in it. And take a look at your environment. Take a look at your basement or your garage or the cleaning supplies in your closets. Get rid of them, or if you have to have those types of cleaning supplies, put them in double-layered containers. And when you do that, you're preventing degassing and breathing small concentrations of these chemicals. Because these chemicals you breathe in, and it affects your endocrine system and your immune system. You want to get rid of them. So please go to my store, get the Zeolite. It's very important, all right? And if you do this regularly, you'll also slowly get rid of those PFAS chemicals. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And you are going to need that free gift for the winter. All right.
Seen as Betsy Clyde is live there this morning. Clearly, the White House knows there are questions, and not just from Democrats this time.
Yeah, they are facing questions from both sides of the aisle about whether they potentially committed a war crime. And this comes after our colleague Natasha Bertrand reported over the weekend that the U.S. military carried out a second strike on an alleged drug boat operating in the Caribbean on September 2nd, after it was assessed that a first strike did not kill anyone on board. Sources familiar with the matter say that when the initial strike appeared to disable the boat and cause deaths, it was then determined that there were survivors. A second strike was launched on that boat, killing 11 people in total and sinking the ship. Now, one of the sources says that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the military before this operation to ensure that everybody aboard was killed. It is not clear if he knew that people were alive after that strike. Now, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill now calling for investigations and questioning the legality of this. President Trump fielded questions from reporters as he made his way back to Washington last night. Listen.
Number one, I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that, not the second strike.
Now, the U.S. military has amassed a massive show of force in the region and carried out about 20 known strikes on these drug vessels in the Caribbean, plus one in the Eastern Pacific. There are about 15,000 U.S. troops in the region, along with more than a dozen warships, and we are learning that this evening.
My understanding, you got to put it in the context, okay? Let's just assume we don't want the rare earth metals and the energy from Venezuela. Of course we do. Let's just assume that we don't want hegemonic power in the South, in South America and in the Western Hemisphere. Of course we do. But let's just put that aside. There are anywhere from 50 to 80,000 people, I think it's closer to 80,000 per year, that die from drug overdose. 80,000 per year. That's more than all of our casualties in the Middle East post 9/11. Now put that into context. 80,000 a year. Now let's just lowball it to 50,000 a year, which is still too high. Do you really care what we do to the drug runners? With a second strike, with a double tap? Maybe we should quadruple tap. Maybe 10 tap, 20 tap. Who cares? You know, it's time that we actually have a president that has some balls.
Meeting with top members of his cabinet to discuss next steps, John.
Yeah, I keep hearing that sound from the president. The verbiage is so interesting there. He doesn't categorically say there wasn't a second strike. That's what Congress wants to investigate right now, and that in and of itself may raise some very thorny questions. Betsy Klein, thank you very much for your reporting on this. Kate.
And last night I saw Jesse Waters from Fox State, and I didn't know this, but it's true. Obama did a strike in the Middle East. Didn't kill everybody in a caravan hit. And they went back and killed them in the caravan hit. So he double tapped. So if it was okay for Obama, why can't you do it for the drug runners? Oh, a Democrat can do it, but Donald J. Trump's administration can't. What they're trying to do is trying to find some way to try to kick out Pete Hegseth. Why? Because he actually told the generals, get in shape, put on your war face, and start killing. And you got a bunch of liberals going, no, we got to have a peaceful Defense Department. What? What? This is how you lose your empire, by having a bunch of wusses that have a bunch of participation medals on their uniform. These generals haven't won a war in a long time. Korea wasn't won. Vietnam wasn't won. Do you think Iraq and Afghanistan we won? What war did we win post World War II? None. Zero. Zero.
With this meeting at the White House, we just reported on is happening tonight on this very issue. Joining us right now to talk more about it, CNN senior military analyst, retired Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander.
Former NATO Supreme Commander that didn't win a war in his whole career, but he has a lot of medals. You ever look at like General Eisenhower, all right? General Eisenhower, and you look at the medals he has, and you gotta remember, you know, he was pretty damn good during World War II, right? You look at his uniform, he doesn't have a whole lot of medals. You look at these generals today, that haven't won a war, and they got lots of medals. Participation. That's what's happening. And they're out of shape and they can't even do a sit-up or a push-up.
Great to see you again. You also ran Southern Command, so you know this region well. I want to play for you another piece of sound. We had Senator Angus King on this morning, what he said.
It's all about the facts, Kate. The law is clear. If the facts are as have been alleged, that there was a second strike specifically to kill the survivors in the water, that's a stone cold war crime.
Obama did it in a caravan in the Middle East. No one said anything about a war crime with Obama. What's going on here? Oh, it's okay. You see, what it is the CIA wants this to stop so they can continue their black ops doing the drug running. See, people need to pay attention. There is an infighting within the deep state. Now, some people use the term black hats and white hats and all this stuff, but the thing is that we're seeing it right here. This is the conduit for the black ops, for the CIA.
So are we looking at a possible war crime, and who gives that order? Who would know?
Yes, I think Senator King is exactly right. I think the president is right when he says he would not have wanted that. I can't imagine any American would want us to machine gun survivors in the water. This is the functional equivalent of that. World War II, the Nazis did that. We didn't do that. So I think this one screams for a serious under oath investigation. And I think that's what we're going to see. In terms of who gave the order, certainly the Secretary of Defense would have authorized the mission. He would have authorized the level of force, the lethality of the mission. After that, Kate, it becomes a tactical question, who actually gave the order for the second strike. This is exactly why we need a thorough investigation with a real timeline, a tick-tock, who said what, when, what was the result. But I can't imagine any American believes that we should be machine gunning people that are floating in the water. Clearly not.
Why not? They're drug runners. They're the enemy. And guess what? The Opium Wars 2.0 is happening right now. China's trying to weaken the United States. Don't get that wrong. They're doing it on purpose.
Threat to the United States.
Also, Admiral, you've been really helpful engaging kind of the odds, if you will, and kind of laying out the odds since we started talking about these boat strikes. You have this meeting now that's going to be happening at the White House to talk about next steps in Venezuela. You add all of this, add in this new detail, add in this meeting, add in the phone call between President Trump and Nicolas Maduro. How likely are land strikes now, do you think?
I think it's
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed. But when I showed them my super low energy bill, they were blown away. Check that out.
I think it's a 2/3 chance we're going to see some form of strikes. Let's be clear here, Kate. What I think 2/3 chance we're going to see are drones, Tomahawk missiles, maybe some manned aircraft, probably going after drug-related sites. That fits in with the narrative the administration has laid out. What I think is unlikely, kind of highly unlikely, are a significant number of boots on the ground, maybe some special forces here and there. I think even that is very high risk. So at the meeting tonight in the White House, I think the president will formally receive these options, take advice from his cabinet, make a decision. I think it's a 2 in 3 chance over the next few days, this week, that we see some strikes. Break. The countervailing thought would be a good one, which is the ongoing potential conversations between the president and Maduro. Let's hope President Maduro wakes up to the reality of what he's looking at and decide, now's a pretty good time to head out to a hacienda outside of Havana. I hope he does that. If not, strikes are 2 and 3 chance.
Let's get right to CNN Chief National Security Analyst Jim Sciutto for the latest. Again, I was struck by the fact that President Trump says, I don't know what happened, and Pete said he didn't want them. So what do we know about what actually happened?
And Trump said he wouldn't have wanted a second strike on survivors as well. And that gets to what you said right correctly, John, is that there's been bipartisan question and to some degree outrage at this strike. And to be clear, there were already bipartisan questions about the strikes prior to this particular one, questions about the legal justification for using deadly force against these drug boats. Now you have this second issue, that the first strike
so they can ship the drugs to America and kill 80,000 Americans per year, but there are people out there that want to say Trump's a bad guy from shooting boats in the international waters. What? See, this is the land of Wussyville. Land of Wussyville, and that's how you lose your hegemonic power, when you just Wussyville your whole society.
Not all of them, and that U.S. forces carried out a second strike to kill the survivors. That's key because the law of war is such that not only do you not kill the wounded or the survivors of a strike, but you have some obligation to give them medical care. And if folks at home are watching this and saying, oh, but they're alleged drug dealers, etc. I mean, go to the Vietnam War, the World War II. U.S. medics provided medical care to wounded soldiers of enemy forces.
Yeah, and Obama did a double tap on terrorists in the Middle East with the drone strike. Why isn't Obama under war crimes? Oh, Obama can do it, but Trump can't.
So now you have bipartisan investigations both in the House and the Senate, and keep in mind these are Republican-led investigations, of course, John, because they have the majority in both the House and the Senate, and it speaks to broader questions about these operations, right? Because as I said at the start, there were already questions, there were already demands from both Republican and Democratic lawmakers prior to this for the administration to better articulate its legal justification for any of these deadly strikes, and they have not been satisfied with those answers. So, among their sources of dissatisfaction is that there's been no written legal justification given, which, as I understand it, speaking to folks on the Hill, is required for this sort of thing. So, listen, it's
Again,
going to be.
Where were they when Obama did it? Where were they? See, the deep state doesn't like Trump. Deep state loved Obama.
Major issue for not just this administration, but also the Defense Department as these investigations go forward.
Yeah, and again, as Senator Angus King just said, the facts will largely dictate this. If there was a second strike, if there was a strike on survivors, that in itself may cross a line there. Then the question is, who authorized it? These are questions that will, I think, be answered over time. Jim, meanwhile, President Trump, we're learning, had some conversation with the Venezuelan leader, and this is happening sort of separate from this but connected. The Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, what's going on there?
So President Trump acknowledged that he had a phone call. He didn't describe the phone call, and he wouldn't say whether it was a good or a bad one. He said it was just a phone call. Similar from Venezuelan officials, they won't say what was said or whether any progress was made there. But I think, John, that this is part of, it's become sort of standard to this whole Venezuela military buildup, right? That you have a buildup, but then you have a phone call. You have the president over the weekend saying, consider Venezuelan airspace closed, but then saying, hey, don't take that to mean that U.S. strikes are about to follow. There's been a theater quality to this operation, right? Because you have a good fifth of the U.S. Navy right off the coast of Venezuela right now, a force commensurate with at least the possibility of ground operations or even an invasion, which hasn't been used. And it seems that the administration's hope is just the appearance of that force, and threats like we're going to close the airspace will be enough to push Maduro from power. That hasn't happened yet. There were questions over the weekend because Maduro hadn't been seen publicly, but then he showed up at a public event there So he certainly hasn't left yet. It raises another question, John, right? Like, what is the actual goal of this? Is the U.S. on the verge of major military action in Venezuela? Or is this for show, hoping that that show of force is enough to force him from power? We just don't know. But we do know they're talking. What was said in that call? Was it an invitation to leave the country? Perhaps. We haven't seen Maduro take that yet.
These are questions that members of Congress themselves are asking right now. Jim Sciutto, great to see you this morning. Thank you very much for your reporting on all this.
All right, let's go to thoughts about killing Americans by the Chinese.
Tensions are growing between China and Japan over the future of Taiwan. China's defense ministry is sending a new warning to Japan that it will, quote, pay a painful price if a line is crossed in Japan's latest plan to deploy missiles near Taiwan. However, Japan's reportedly denying claims that President Trump asked the Japanese Prime Minister to avoid provoking China. The Beijing is now turning to France to try and shore up support. Bloomberg reports this. An official at Macron's Élysée Palace said Thursday, Paris is consistent in supporting the one China policy, the recognition that the mainland and Taiwan make up a single nation governed by Beijing, and calls for the status quo to be respected. Now, Macron is set to visit China this week to hold some economic and commercial discussions. Is that a factor in that statement from that spokesperson from the Élysée Palace? Well, let's bring in Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. I want to get your reaction to that, because I think the key thing here is Macron's going to China to talk about economic policy. And here you've got this statement of, the French, the government, putting their support behind China. And yes, Beijing runs Taiwan.
Well, certainly, Cheryl, what's going on here is that Beijing is going on a bender. So every conversation it has with every country is going to focus on Japan and Taiwan, as it has since November 7th. That's when Prime Minister Takaichi said that Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be a survival-threatening situation for Japan, which would permit her to mobilize the self-defense forces. Since then, China picked this confrontation, and it has been losing. And so I think that China is now looking for allies far and away. But clearly right now, China has been humbled by someone who will not be cowed by Beijing's bluster.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. But, another issue that they're having right now, and this is a global story, is this Hong Kong fire. 151 people are dead. There's still about 40 missing. This was last week. It was a high-rise building. Officials say the death toll could even rise beyond that. They've been searching for survivors, but that could take 3 to 4 weeks. And there's been 13 arrests. All were working at a construction firm in charge of renovating that building. They're facing charges, negligence and manslaughter. Hong Kong announced a 3-day period of mourning, Gordon. But, there's a lot of anger in Hong Kong against Beijing and China. Beijing is now saying, we're going to crack down on any anti-China protests. But is this some type of tipping point, do you think, in Hong Kong in particular, and this authoritarian rule over China, which they've had to deal with?
It could certainly be the tipping point. Just a few hours ago, the Hong Kong police released Miles Kwan, a student who had started an online petition about the fire demanding accountability. And he had been arrested under the national security law. Well, I think that essentially Beijing right now realized that was going too far, so they had to let him go. And I think that is going to be a sign that the Hong Kong people are indignant. And they're not only indignant over the contractors and the others who failed to follow safety procedures, but also against the Hong Kong government, which seems to be going after Hong Kong people who have been questioning the government's handling this. One other thing, Cheryl. China's propagandists are blaming America and Britain for the fire. And that is just ludicrous, because Britain handed over Hong Kong on July 1st, 1997. And for them to blame Britain, this certainly is a sign of desperation on the part of China.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The other thing is when it comes to desperation is the technology sector in China. They've been moving, these technology companies, moving their AI trading models apparently abroad, because they want to get those NVIDIA chips, and they're trying to avoid U.S. restrictions. This is in the Financial Times. President Trump weighed whether to allow NVIDIA to sell their newest chip to Chinese companies. That reverses existing policy, but tightening restrictions on chip sales to Beijing. Maria had NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang last month all about this. Watch.
that in President Trump's first administration, he set the tone perfectly for America to lead in technology and make sure that American companies have the best and first, but for American technology companies around the world to compete and win. From a 95% market share in the China market, which is one of the most important markets in the world, when President Trump left office, NVIDIA's market share in China is now 0%. In fact, we've been banned from returning back to the Chinese market by the Chinese. What we really have done is conceded and retreated from the second largest technology market in the world. And President Trump sees that. We underestimated China's ability to accelerate their indigenous technology industry. They manufacture now millions of AI chips. It is very clear now their military doesn't rely on American technology.
Gordon, react to what he just said there.
Almost nothing is correct. First of all, what we have seen is both Alibaba and ByteDance go to these Southeast Asian data centers so they could use NVIDIA chips. And we saw DeepSeek, which doesn't use NVIDIA chips. It is not able to come up with its R2 model, which had been expected last August. And that shows you that China desperately needs American chips. Now, the reason why this is important is because these chips are being used by the Chinese military to develop weapons to kill Americans. And it is not only strategically wrong for America to sell advanced chips to China, but it's also morally wrong. And Jensen Huang will say anything to be able to sell chips to China that can be used against Americans. But I think common sense.
He's totally right about this. Chan is totally right about this. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, all he cares about is the shareholder value and selling chips. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about this issue between the United States and China. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know, the thing is, it's the same problem of kicking the can down the road, and you just want peace immediately and hope that there's not going to be a war down in the future. But when you do kick the can down the road, China will continue to advance their technology, continue to war plan, continue to prepare for taking the island chains, the first island chains, maybe even the second island chains. But the point here is that they've already telegraphed that they want them and that they're going to do it. The question is when. So don't you think that we should preempt it? No, Jensen Huang, or whatever the hell his name is, from NVIDIA, all he cares about is selling chips, driving the price up, driving his stock price up. He doesn't care about how many Americans are going to lose their lives in the Pacific when we have a war with China. He doesn't give a shit. No, it's time. We need to stop kicking the can down the road, and we need to start preparing for this eventuality in the Pacific. And the war that's going to happen is going to be a kinetic one. It's going to be heavily involved with high technology. It's probably going to be the first major drone war. I mean, we have a drone war in the Ukraine, but what's going to happen in the Pacific is going to be like Star Wars.
Just will not permit that. And I hope President Trump does not allow the sale of more advanced chips, especially ones on the Blackwell architecture, to China.
Now, real quick,
what Trump should say is that what Trump should say is there's a forbidden city, and there is a life-appointed dictator named President Xi running the show in China. Before you get American technology, you need to have a democracy. If not, we'll kill you, and then we'll sell you the chips. I mean, why can't we be more forceful instead of this patty cake stuff? Well, you know, we're gonna embargo certain chips, and no. Trump should just say the CCP is going to end. just going to end. Why can't we be that way? Oh, we got America First people saying we want only concentration of domestic policy, not international policy. But people that are America First don't really understand that you have a nice, safe, wonderful economy because of the hegemonic power that we project. You stop projecting that hegemonic power, you will no longer have the flourishing economy that you have.
Gordon, you have been very critical and rightly so about China's economy, showing that it really has been under pressure, slowing down and stuff. And yet their stock market has had a banner year. Is that because of their AI breakthroughs, or how do you really explain that?
I think part of it is because the Chinese equities had fallen so fast. And essentially, the Chinese government then decided it was going to ramp up the equity market by putting government money into it. And nothing gets foreign money faster than a rising market. So I think essentially that's it. But you look at the Chinese economy, especially the numbers that have come out over the last couple of days, it shows that the economy in China is clearly contracting. The PMI for manufacturing, the PMI for services, the earnings of the defense contractors, all of this just shows that China's economy is getting smaller, not bigger.
Gordon Chang, it's always great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody.
All right, we're gonna go to well, something's going on with crypto here. There's a little bit of a surge in Bitcoin at 91,000. Let's listen into Bloomberg here.
Next year, there was really nothing wrong. It reminds me of that the only thing to fear is fear itself. And it seems to me that a couple things happened. One, there was some issue with the market maker. I can't prove it, but there was, I think, a little bit of a market maker maybe caught with too much leverage. That caused a little. And then a lot of these OGs who have been in Bitcoin since like 10 years ago, and now they're older, they probably want to like do adult things like buy a house or something. And I think a lot of them saw the 110,000 to 120,000 start to be a range, and it wasn't going to go any higher. So I think there was like what we call the silent IPO. A lot of them are like, okay, I'm going to cash out. And that sort of, I think, put a ceiling on the price. The ETF investors have held up their end of the bargain, though. I mean, there was a $3 billion of outflows in the past month, but that's after a 35% decline. And that's only 3% of assets. So they're holding up, all told, $22 billion into the Bitcoin ETFs this year, which is a lot of money. So a lot of this sell-off is, as I tell the crypto natives, the call is coming from inside the house. They try to put it on the ETF sometimes, but this is not the boomers. This is them. And I think, well, you know, Bitcoin does this. It has these steep sell-offs. So we'll see where it goes from here, but it's certainly not the year a lot of people expected.
Eric, we're really seeing the perils of retail.
Well, a lot of people were saying that Bitcoin was going to be at $250,000 by year end. That's not going to happen. All right. But they also said, and even Donald J. Trump Jr. was saying that Bitcoin was going to be at like 150 or 175. It's below 100. Now, a major holder of Bitcoin is Strategy. And they're leveraged, all right? They borrow money to buy Bitcoin. If it gets to the point where Bitcoin stays below 80, they're going to have to liquidate. Well, if they liquidate, there's going to be a lot of Bitcoin on the market. If there's a lot of Bitcoin on the market, the price is going to drop. It's going to go from 70 to 40 to 20. So you got to really pay attention to this. It's unstable. It's unstable because of the whales. And the ones that were retail investors that were going into ETFs, the ETFs are getting outflows because it's not a stable trade. It's too volatile because of the whales. There's too much market manipulation on top of, you know, calculations, the ability to calculate faster with quantum computing and all this stuff. All right. be very, very careful with Bitcoin. It's very volatile.
Products play out. Do you think that the industry has gone too far by offering them to mom and pop investors?
Yep.
So I don't think so. I think Bitcoin has paid its dues. If you know, the one thing about Bitcoin I think you have to respect, and I did before I really learned more about it, I always respected its ability to come back from near-death experiences. Because if you look at tulips or beanie babies, which it gets compared to, they were one and done.
The only reason is the whales are coming in. It's not liquid. It's not a liquid market. So when it starts to drop, then you know the forever Bitcoin holders, they come in and buy. Now think about the strategy. Think about the strategy that Strategy has. All right, what's their business plan? To try to corner the market in Bitcoin. Well, if they corner the market in Bitcoin, they're trying to create themselves as a Federal Reserve. They're trying to create themselves as a reserve. Do you think that the Federal Reserve and other central banks that actually create lots of wars throughout the centuries, do you think that they're going to allow someone to corner the market? No. No. On top of it, just assume that the central banks don't prevent that cornering of the market that Strategy has. Let's just assume that the central banks don't get involved to try to prevent Strategy's strategy. Think about a liquid market. If you have someone hoarding, do you have a liquid market? Anyone that tries to hoard assets doesn't create a liquid market. And when they start dumping, it creates a behavior that's asymmetric. And what starts to happen is there's a big sell-off. The whales, because of them selling or them buying, create this big move up and down. If you had a very liquid market, it would just move up a little bit, go down a little bit, move up a little bit, go down a little bit. If there's some change in the economy, then there would be a jump to fusion, and then it'll go up a lot or down a lot, and then it'll start to harmonically oscillate. You look at all currencies that are very liquid, like the pound, the yen, the US dollar. When there's a change in the economy, let's say that's positive, then it'll strengthen their currency relative to other currencies. There'll be a jump to fusion with the trade ratio for different currencies, and then harmonically oscillate. If there's something negative about the economy, the currency will depreciate, it'll go down, and then it'll harmonically oscillate. That's what a liquid market does. Do you see that with Bitcoin? No. Why? Because it's not a liquid market.
We're now at 16.5. This is
All right, let's listen into, maybe before we go, inflation fear surge as America blows billions online. All right, let's, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. Magnesium is super important to help the efficacy of vitamin D3. Magnesium also helps with brain function, super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. And magnesium and zinc will boost up your immune system. And vitamin C will help with your skin. So this is a great stack to help with your skin, your brain function, and your immune system. Take it every day, slow down the aging process. Now, why does taking this stack slow down the aging process? If you boost up your immune system, you're not as sick. If you're not as sick, you actually age slower. If you are sick chronically, you age faster. It's that simple. Please go to my store and get heirloom barley. Heirloom barley is very high quality micronutrient protein. It's a month supply powder. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. It helps to detoxify your body, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals. And when you do that regularly, you're actually improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Reducing inflammation and detoxifying will help with your brain function, help with the health of your neurons. By bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, it's going to help to reduce plaque formation. So by taking this, you're actually slowing down the aging process, because it's about detox, bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals. Please go to my store and take this every day. This is a month's supply. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. And that gift you're going to need for the winter season. Trust me.
We actually have a great start to your Tuesday. Dow up 76, S&P up 18, NASDAQ up 99. So we're reversing what happened yesterday because obviously we had pretty rough day at the office yesterday. The Dow dropped more than 400 points, as you can see on your screen. The S&P 500 fell more than 0.5%. Some investors, though, are arguing that markets are due for a pullback after months of steady gains in 2025. Crypto is part of that retreat. Bitcoin slid 6%. Worst day we've seen since March. Bitcoin right now, as you can see on your screen, 87,000 and change. Economists are now looking.
Now, think about this wild swings in Bitcoin. It was at 87 as of the recording by Fox Business. It's now trading at 90,000. But there's this huge wave. How do you have a store of value if there's volatility in the currency? Because what it is an exotic derivative. That's what it is. And they always crash. They always crash. Now, there's some people that aren't that intelligent and that aren't that knowledgeable about economies think that something's different. This is just something's different about this. Really? Economies work really simple. Supply, demand. Supply, demand. Nothing different. It's been like that ever since the dawn of man. Supply, demand.
American consumer. Salesforce saying that Black Friday online spending nearing $12 billion. Cyber Monday shopping set to rake in at least another $17 billion. Then there's a new survey finding that Americans are more likely to believe President Trump's economic agenda has raised prices rather than lowering them. Joining me now, former Chrysler and Home Depot chairman and CEO, and Accelerate LLC founder and CEO, Bob Nardelli. Bob, it's great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so let's start with the state of the consumer. Looking at these numbers on Black Friday and then again Cyber Monday, which is the latest numbers we have, $9.1 billion was spent online yesterday, according to Adobe Analytics. That's a 4.5% jump year over year. So what we're saying Americans are spending, how do you interpret this?
Well, I think we need a really good AI agent to try and figure out this consumer, Cheryl, because exactly your opening comment. You know, we hear a lot about affordability, a lot about.
No, you don't need an AI. No, you don't need an AI agent to understand the consumer. What you need is people to actually get off their fucking phone so they can rewire their brain correctly, so they can think. See, the big problem is that everyone's on social media and they become stupid. And even supposedly the experts, and this guy that she's talking to used to be the second guy for GE under Jack Welch. They didn't elevate him, and so he went to, I think it was Home Depot, to run it. He's just one of those MBAs, Jack Welch MBAs.
Yet if you look at what happened between Friday and Monday, the number I just got for online spending was like 43 billion. And those are not staples. Those are discretionary buys. So we hear a lot about increase
in my previous videos, I think it was 2 videos ago, maybe 3 videos ago, most of the money is going to clothes in electronics. Now, spending went up. 4.1%. Now, if spending went up 4.1%, they're not talking about unit sales. They're talking about dollar sales. Now, prices went up. How much of that price went up relative to this 4% increase? How much of that 4% increase is due to inflation? I'd really like to know that. And subtract the inflation out of it. Are we better than last year or worse than last year in terms of dollar sales? I suspect that things aren't as great as they're saying. Because if you're doing comps, and let's say you sold $100 million worth of product last year, and you're selling $110 million this year, you say, well, I have $10 million more. 10% higher. But let's say 100% of that 10 million is just inflation. Well, did you do better than last year? No, you're broke even. So where's the inflation adjusted number?
Both food, petrol, energy, and so forth. But I don't know, this consumer has really come off their sofas and really spent a ton of money, over $43 billion, just online in the last 4.
And a lot of people are buying this on credit. Well, what's going to happen in January and February when everything starts to come due?
Hey, so we'll have to wait and see whether they dipped into their savings, whether they loaded up their credit card.
See?
We'll see what happens at the turn of the year.
See?
What kind of exposure they put themselves into. But they
and he's got a fancy MBA.
Very heavily these last 4 days online.
And Bob, what is so interesting in this poll that I mentioned, this is a Yahoo YouGov poll. This is late November. 49% of respondents said that President Trump has done more to increase prices, 24% saying he's done more to lower prices, and then 17% about the same. So you see these Americans spending in first blush of what we've gotten over the last 5 days.
I'm going to go over to Bloomberg here. They're talking about the holiday momentum builds for online sales. Let's just listen in. This dovetails into what we were just listening to.
Maybe there still could be some impact next year?
Well, if you think about when the tariffs were implemented, it really affected the back half of this year, right? So when you go into the first half of next year, you're up against comparisons where there really wasn't a tariff impact. So that's one thing that you have to deal with. The second thing is that prices are going up. I'm not, we did see select price increases. In fact, Nike came out and said that they're directly raising prices, but on select goods, and I think that's the approach that most retailers have been taking is we'll raise prices where we can and where we know we can't, we'll absorb it, or we'll offset it otherwise through efficiencies and supplier kickbacks. So that's what we'll continue to see happen next year. But there is still some pressure. Now we'll see what happens next week, right, where the court ruling could be that the tariffs are just unwarranted and are unlawful. And if that happens, then I think we have some positive surprises in for us next year.
I think somebody's got to pay back somebody at some point for those tariffs. I don't know how that's going to play out. That's next week. We'll worry about that next week. Punam Goyal, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Punam Goyal, she covers all the retail stuff.
Now let's go back to Fox News.
Intelligence.
They're politicizing it and saying that President Trump isn't helping them out on prices. So where does the rubber meet the road here?
Well, I think there's a dichotomy out there, Cheryl, in that there are price inflation. There are points of inflation that are out there. And if you look at automobiles, for example, was another area where they're complaining about higher prices. And that's because used cars inventory is down. That's because the auto industry has really shifted to the higher price, higher feature and appearance vehicles. The volume on automobiles right now is down 15.7 SAR, seasonally adjusted rate. When I was at Chrysler, it was somewhere around 19 million units. So we're seeing the production level down. We saw where Ford just discontinued their F-150 Lightning. So again, some of the high prices we're seeing there are a result of not what President Trump has caused, but what's happening with the Biden administration when we saw 40% wage increases in the auto industry with UPS, etc.
Yeah, this guy reminds me. Okay, so I had to look up something get my memory back here. Nardelli, he was GE. He was superseded by someone else because he was going to be running GE after Jack Welch, but Jack Welch decided to pick someone else. Nardelli went to Home Depot. Then Nardelli eventually ended up at Chrysler. This cocksucker is the one that destroyed Chrysler. Now Chrysler isn't an American company anymore. You know why? Because of an MBA that didn't know about cars. Now I know. It's all coming back now. Another MBA that doesn't know about cars. Bob Nardelli. Good job. Good job. Stupid ass.
Carryover from previous administration to this administration that in fact did raise prices. Now this administration doing everything they can to get it back in check, and I think we will. I think the forecast for 2026 is very positive. It's very strong. For example, yesterday we saw where Pfizer and Merck took a big hit. I think Pfizer took over 1%. We're seeing it come back today. So we're seeing these goes ins and goes outs, just like unemployment, has ticked up. I think unemployment will tick up a little bit more before the end of the year, Cheryl.
Yeah, no, certainly that is something that we know that the Fed is watching very carefully. And markets.
I think by the end of the year, we're going to see probably 4.6%. But that data won't be available until January.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you're the former chairman and CEO of Chrysler. I do want to talk to you about car prices because front page of the Wall Street Journal yesterday was this story about the American consumer.
He's the one that destroyed Chrysler. He's an expert. Expert at destroying companies.
Losing patience with high car prices, opting to either downsize, buy used vehicles, take out longer loans, or simply hold out for better deals. So what did you make of that? There's also, of course, we know this huge pullback from EVs because the subsidies expired, and Americans are saying, without those subsidies from the government, I'm not interested in an electric vehicle.
Well, let's pick up where you left off there on EVs. When's the last time you heard people complaining about charging of EVs? It used to be range anxiety, then it became charging anxiety. And today, every available electron is being funneled towards data centers. And I think the thing that will pace the ability to implement and get data centers up, we can put up a building, you can put up tip walls and so on and so forth. But the real challenge will be to get the energy. If you look at GE Vernova, GE Power Systems that I ran, they've got an 8 to 10 year backlog. And you could put up a data center quickly. It takes years to get a power plant in place. So we're going to see a real collision here between the demand for AI, just like we saw early on, demand for EV. And I think the thing that will really pace the ability to implement AI will be the power source in our country.
It's an interesting connection that you...
Energy is going to go up, the cost. That's what's going to happen because we have not invested in our infrastructure. That means natural gas is going to go up. That means coal is going to go up. Your electric bill is going to go up.
Between these AI data centers and also too under the Biden administration, what we saw was this promise of these hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand these charging stations, and it just never materialized. So that was.
Have you noticed he's only focusing on the energy component to this? What about the robust design? Do you think that an EV is robust? Do you think an EV lasts 20 years? 15 years? 10 years? No, not even close. The batteries don't last. The cost to change them is too expensive. $10,000, $20,000. It's designed to be a throwaway every 6 years or 4 years. So overall, it is more cost effective for the individual and for the society to actually have either a hybrid powertrain or a combustion powertrain. But 100% EV doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in terms of the total cost. From buying it to servicing it, extending the life of it, it doesn't make sense. Combustion engines will last more than 100,000 miles. If you take care of it, you could easily get 250,000 miles on it. With some repair. Try to do that with an EV. Try to have an EV. Talk to someone that has had an EV for 6 years. What kind of problems are you having? Especially if they live in an environment like the Midwest, or even the East Coast, like Northeast, where there's temperature gradients between the seasons. How's it working for you? Probably not so well.
I just can't take it anymore.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Omega-3 will help your cardiovascular health. And if you listen to Bob Nardelli, you probably are having a heart attack. So please go to my store and get the omega-3. This will bring down inflammation, help with your lipid profile. And when you do that at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. So you don't have a heart attack listening to Bob Nardelli, because he's the one that destroyed Chrysler. Omega-3 also reduces the stickiness of your red blood cells to reduce overclotting. So please go to my store, take the omega-3. This is super important for cardiovascular health. There are a lot of people in the United States that have cardiovascular disease. You need to help your vascular system, and that's through diet, exercise, and proper supplementation. And if you're 40 years of age or older, take Myotrol, male or female. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. It also helps your mitochondrial health, so you have the ATP to maintain the muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Myotrol. This is going to reduce atrophy. It's going to help you to build muscle. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from Myotrol also to help build strength for your sport. Take Myotrol. Now, when you're doing your resistance training, here's a little pro tip. When you're doing your resistance training, make sure you do back exercises. Build up your back muscles. What that will do is it'll improve your spine, your posture. You'll get better blood flow, venous flow back to your heart, so your cardiovascular system will improve when you have better posture. When you have better posture, you will also have better lymphatic flow, so your immune system will perform better. You'll have denser vertebrae for your spine. So it's really important to improve your back muscles. There's lots of different exercises, rowing exercises, and if you're standing and your body is like this, and you have some weights hanging from your arms, right? And the weights are hanging like this, and just go up, right? And then you can also, if you're hanging like this, you can have the weights down here, and then you lift the weights this way, and it'll build up some of your back muscles. But it's really important to build up back muscles, especially if you hit 40 years of age. So please take my advice, get the Myotrol, and get the omega-3. This is a great stack. This is helping your muscles and stopping the atrophy. And this is going to help with your cardiovascular health. Please go to my store, use discount 5, and get $5 off any orders. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Happy holidays.
Our next guest going to weigh in on crypto regulations, corporate governance, and more. Join us now, SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. Mr. Chairman, I see where you are right now at the New York Stock Exchange. You're going to celebrate or at least talk about America's 250th, which is coming up next year. And there's a ceremony at the opening bell. And I'm kind of trying to tie together what you do, what we talk about on this show, and how it relates to America's story. And it's capitalism and the rise of the United States have been just inextricably linked. And
To a crisis facing.
I think freedom, free, because it was such a novel concept. Liberty, when it happened, and we're talking about free markets. It just goes hand in hand.
It does. It does. Thank you very much, Joe, and thanks for having me today. So I'm really up here in New York today at the New York Stock Exchange and later on at NASDAQ to really celebrate what you're talking about. We have the 250th anniversary.
I've been on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange multiple times. It's pretty cool. The sad thing is, it's a shell of itself because everything's becoming computerized. The data centers aren't even in New York, they're in New Jersey. And Wall Street's ending up becoming a museum. Welcome to America.
Signing of the Declaration of Independence next year, which, like you say, is all about liberty and individual freedom and the right to be secure in your property and to pursue happiness. But the thing is that the capital markets have been the engine behind the development of all sorts of innovation, investors risking their money for entrepreneurs to develop their products. And America, in fact, was an investment before it was a nation, because the English investors, British investors, put money into trying to start settlements, North Carolina, which didn't work so well, but then came others at Jamestown and afterwards. And so they risked their money to eventually build the nation that we have to celebrate today.
Right. Philosophers. Philosophers have written about the leisure class, and we get to a point where, our academics look around and take everything for granted, and they're able to actually start talking about things like socialism. And it's happening again with our young. I don't know where we're going wrong. 51% think socialism might be superior to capitalism. Maybe they don't remember it. The millions of people affected over, through history, through those ill.
Societies fall when you have socialism. Societies fall when you don't have God, country, and family. Societies fall when you have a ethos perpetuated in a society where you don't have to work. You don't have to work hard. It's not about meritocracy. It's just about a handout. And then once the society collapses, then there's slowly the phoenix rises again, and then there's going to be a new dawn for a new economy. But unfortunately, if we keep on going on this path, we're going to lose. We're going to lose our country. We're going to lose our economy. We're going to lose our constitutional freedoms. It's not something you can reboot like in 10 days. It's something that takes centuries to reboot. Centuries. So anyone that wants to, any of these people that are just all about leisure, that's not what America is. It's about moving forward, exploring, doing the next big thing, not sitting on your laurels. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people in America that are lazy.
Conceived notions. What are we doing wrong, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I don't know. I think the main thing is to, focus on the positive, and teach people, how we got to where we are today. And obviously there are problems. Every human enterprise has problems. Nothing's perfect. But, we've made huge progress in 250 years, individual liberty for all, and, the prosperity that we enjoy. And that, again, is because people are investing their money because they see a possibility of profit, yes, but also, it lifts all boats.
My law professor when you're in business school, you have to take law, business law. So one of my law professors stated, and this is so true, to control the society, for a society to be peaceful and hardworking, you have to buy a home. You start thinking about people that are revolutionary, you start thinking about people that are trying to break stuff, right? They usually don't own a home. Almost always. You think the Antifa people have a home? Do you think the ones that are rioting, under the BLM cause have a home? Most of them don't. So when you don't have a younger constituency being able to afford a home because of lack of jobs or the cost of buying a home, then you are increasing the probability of political instability.
The developments that come out of risk-taking are huge, that we've developed over the years, airplanes now looking at space and maybe colonizing Mars and things like that. So risk takers are there, and young folks are taking risks as well. So I wouldn't so much focus on on the isms as much as what is driving our forces. And so here, with respect to the United States capital markets, I want to make sure that we're modernizing our rule book, making sure that we are keeping pace with where we should be as far as ease of raising capital. We today have more or less half the number of public companies that we had 30 years ago. And so we at the SEC are taking steps to address that, try to make IPOs great again is what my goal is. And so we're kicking that off as well here in the new year.
Mr. Chairman, we've talked a lot lately about how gambling and investing are blending in some ways. You see it with the gambling sites, you see it with predictions markets, and I realize that's the CFTC, not your purview in terms of the prediction markets. But we even talked yesterday with Amy Silverman, who just talked about how you do see much more activity in these future markets on things like options and puts that expire within a day. What's your thought on that? Because your job is to make sure that investors are protected. Is there too much of a blend between investing and gambling, or do you think this is something that's manageable?
Well, I do think it's manageable, and I'm focused on the capital markets, and I'll leave my colleagues at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to look after the futures and derivatives markets. And so, but risk taking, there is a continuum from from more long-term things to more short-term as well. But that's inherent in humans to take risks, and others more embracing of it than others who might just stick their money under their mattress. But what we want to try to focus on, and what I hear when I travel abroad in Europe and Japan, for example, is everybody looks with envy and at our capital markets, what we have achieved here in the risk-taking attitude, the investment culture that we have ingrained. And that really is lacking in other cultures. And so that is the thing that is a great asset for the United States that has built our capital markets and has provided capital for entrepreneurs to build towards their dreams, and then to have their investors share in those in building those dreams and making products that people want and people need, and
people have to have stake in the game. People have to feel as though they're a part of this movement of prosperity. When people aren't invested, either through homes or through equities, and they see this advancement and they aren't participating, they feel left out, and then they become radicalized. And this is exactly what my law professor a long time ago said. People that have homes don't usually revolt. So if you have a young population that's starting to hate America, starting hating capitalism, that's probably because they don't have a home or they don't have money in the stock market.
to buy and use.
The proxy advisor. The proxy advisors, shareholder voting, and issues like that, it almost looks like you are trying to roll back a lot of the what some would think were ill-conceived notions of ESG, DEI, et cetera. You got shareholders that represent less than a percentage of a company's outstanding shares, bogging down management with proposals. You've got passive investors like Vanguard or BlackRock, where the CEO can actually say, gee, this is the way I feel about these social issues, and I'm going to vote the shares of a passive investment with what my interests are mine. How did we ever get to that point without thinking that this is insane?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, things have changed a lot. When I was, I've been now at the SEC 3 times, the last 3 decades. But in the early 90s, when I was there for 4 years, the individual investors made up more than half of the market capitalization of the U.S. markets, holding the stocks directly. Now things obviously have changed. They've gone to the holdings. People have ETFs and mutual funds and all sorts of other things. So that's great. And the people are invested in the marketplace, saving for the long term. But I think it's time to modernize our rules, and things have been allowed to, if you've ever had a boat and had barnacles on the hull, it's time to scrape off those barnacles and make our ship be able to sail, quickly through the waters. And so that's what we're setting out to do at the SEC. And there are basically 3 things that we're looking at to try to make IPOs great again. One is to modernize our rule book, to make sure that our regulations are fit for purpose, to help small companies and large companies attract capital. Second is to look at our litigation situation, with respect to, the strike suits and other sorts of frivolous actions that really impede, I think, people from wanting to be public. And then finally, the corporate governance issues that you were alluding to, where we have things that take so much time, various precatory proposals and whatnot that are, that really don't get adopted by shareholders and create, I think, more noise and are weaponized by particular special interest groups and that sort of thing. So we need to get back to basics, make sure that our rule book is fit for purpose, and helping to make our capital markets as efficient and growing as possible.
Can you do what needs to be done with crypto without legislation? And do you think that can happen before the end of the year?
Well, we'll see. We're working with Congress, and we're providing what we call technical assistance to them regarding legislation, and make sure that they're staying on what makes sense and that meshes with other laws and whatnot. And we'll see. I can't prognosticate that, but we have enough authority to drive forward. I'm looking forward to having an innovation exemption that we've been talking about now. We'll be able to get that out in a month or so is what I'm hoping. We were impeded a bit by the government shutdown. Obviously, we couldn't work on things during that time, but we're on track, and we will be able to forge forward with the crypto area and make sure that we are able to embrace this new area of innovation that for too long the United States basically is just pushed back against. And so I'm looking forward to having rules that are focused on helping that sector of.
It's interesting. All right, so when he was talking, this was 2 hours ago or so. When he was talking, it was at 87,000 for Bitcoin. Now it's trading at 91. So I suspect that the SEC chairman's comments is what's driving Bitcoin's rise today.
They come up and make IPO's NIPCA? It doesn't have the same ring. It's,
All right, so I'm gonna go to CNN. Was it CNN? Omnipore and Company. I think she still works for CNN. Talking about why is American student achievement down? All right, this is a big problem. This is a big problem in the United States. All right, but before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the complete multivitamin. This is very easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need for cofactors for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform better. This is a foundational piece to slow down the aging process if you follow my protocol. And take it with the probiotic. You can get the veggie cap version or the powder version. What I have in my hand is the powder version. Take it every day, and with a good gut biome, you're going to improve your health. Why? Good health starts with a healthy gut. Taking a good probiotic every day is going to allow you to improve your immune system, bring down inflammation at the gut level, allow you to absorb your nutrients better, your metabolism will improve, your skin health will improve, even brain function. When you improve your gut, you're actually going to get rid of brain fog. You're going to sleep better. You're going to be able to detoxify your central nervous system because you're getting into the REM cycles that you need. And you're going to be consolidating memory. Gut health is related to brain function. So please go to my store, make sure you get the probiotic, and improve your overall health by taking the probiotic and the multivitamin. All right, with that, let's listen into CNN. And student achievement in the United States.
To a crisis facing public education in America. Students' reading and math scores are reaching historic lows. And according to our next guest, the cause of this decline isn't as obvious as you'd think. New York Magazine's Andrew Rice joins Michelle Martin to explain.
Thanks, Bianna. Andrew Rice, thank you so much for talking with us. Thank you. You opened your piece with some of the latest findings for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is considered kind of the gold standard, figuring out, how kids are doing academically. And these results show, this is over the past year, and it showed that 40% of fourth graders and a third of eighth graders scored below basic in reading. And on the most recent 12th grade math assessment, about 3/4 of high school seniors could not correctly add the cost of 6 lunch items and calculate a 20% tip. And I was just wondering, since you write about a lot of things, what made you take a look at this?
I mean, I think really it began with a personal question that I had, which is, I have a son who's in 8th grade. He's 13 years old. He spent the pandemic, about 18 months almost during the pandemic, in and out of school. His education was quite disrupted during that time period. And so afterwards, I always kind of wondered, what would the long-term educational consequences of this be? There weren't a lot of precedents for it in the academic literature. And so, I just kept reading these articles that described these really sobering, maybe even catastrophic sounding declines in education now, or in educational achievement, and discovered that in fact the story was a lot more complicated than I imagined when I started out. That really people were studying these declines, and they are really drastic, and they did really accelerate during the pandemic, but they began before the pandemic, and they've continued in many ways in many categories after the pandemic, which
probably I'm gonna have him finish his answer, but my take on it is that you've had the steady decline pre-pandemic in education. It was and this decline is exacerbated by being away from school during the pandemic. And I also think that there's an acceleration of this decline, not just because of the pandemic dynamics, but also because of social media dynamics. The TikTok and the spending too much time on the phone and on the iPad, children are not developing the kinematic skills in the arts, either learning on how to draw or learning how to play the piano or learning how to play the violin. They're not running, they're not playing sports. And their brainwave is put into a more passive state. And they're getting their dopamine hit, doing the TikTok. And they don't have concentration. Their concentration levels are very low. Even adults that spend too much time on social media, they have reading comprehension problems and also reading stamina problems, meaning they can't finish a book. Now, the adults that are listening, how many books do you read a year? Have you noticed a decline in how long it takes you? Have you noticed a decline in your reading stamina? How long does it take you to read a book? Does it take you 2 days, 3 days? Does it take you a month, half a year? What is it now? These technologies are dangerous for our brain. And so maybe there's something to be learned from Buddhist tradition or other religions that have spirituality and meditation involved. And that is to calm the brain, to calm the mind, stay away from all of the fancy tech and just calm the mind and reactivate the brain. This is the type of environment that we evolved in. We evolved in a more quiet, more attached to nature environment, not this postmodern flickering of the screens and all this data and all that, right? Now, we also had aggression as part of our evolutionary process, but you can simulate that aggression in sports. But we're going to need to get back to the basics and get away from this low brainwave stuff from social media. Let me give you an example. Do you think it's mentally healthy to chronically listen to, let's say, Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes or, the theories of Charlie Kirk? And was he assassinated by, the Israelis, or was he assassinated by the deep state? Or who cares? I don't really care. Is Erica Kirk crying, or is she fake cries? I don't care. But people that gravitate to this stuff, do you really think that mass consumption of tabloid news makes you a more intellectual person? Do you think that it's doing positive things for your endocrine system? Of course not. Of course not. But if you learn some of the keys of Buddhism or meditation, then maybe you can reboot. Maybe you can get back into homeostasis with your endocrine system. Maybe you can bring down those cortisol levels, go into parasympathetic mode instead of constantly being in sympathetic mode, fight or flight. Because that's what tabloid news does. That's what TikTok does. That's what sensational news does. And the reason why I do these videos and I try to tell people on how to improve their health is that it's a complex, holistic approach. You can't just take one type of supplement. You can't just eat your greens or just eat protein, right? It's a holistic approach. You have to do proper exercise and proper diet and meditation or some sort of spirituality, learn new things. And then you start becoming human again. Because what is it? What is it about us as a species? We're human beings, not human doings. We need to be. But but we have a society that just wants you to do. Well, if you're just going to be a human doer or a human doing, you're not going to be a human being.
There's something else deeper going on here.
One of the most alarming findings in your piece is the reversal of decades of progress. In 2015, this is according to your piece, in 2015, fourth graders performed a full grade level above their counterparts in 2000. Yet almost a decade later, those students were registering all-time lows in reading in high school. So what happened here?
You know, there are a couple different theories.
Part of it is Common Core. Common Core made the students dumber.
What happened and why, but the best clue that we have is timing. The downturn started in about the middle of the last decade, and then that leads us being the people who are I think educational scholars who I talk to, I guess, it leads them to a couple different potential theories. One of them, real obvious and maybe intuitive one to most people or most parents of a teenager like me, is screens. A lot of people just think that, well, the iPad was invented or introduced to the public in 2010, and those kids, hit the education system around 2015, and that's when test scores started to go down. So maybe that's just the simple answer. But as I noted in the story, there's a lot to suggest that there's something deeper going on, something else about the system itself, because the declines are not evenly distributed. They're distributed unevenly to kids who are scoring the lowest. So the kids who were scoring the lowest for a long time were making up ground and gaining ground, and essentially the way that academics that I talked to described it is like, think of it as a fan. For a long time, the fan was kind of getting closer together. What's happened now is the fan is spreading back out, and all of these gaps, especially the achievement gaps between white students and black students, especially, have started to widen. The achievement gap, the math achievement gap, between gender gap between girls and boys has started to widen again. All of these sort of old, long-standing inequities have reasserted themselves. So because it's unevenly distributed, we have to start asking questions about what the schools are doing and what they're doing differently. And that's what my story really tried to go deep into.
Some of these anecdotes that you describe in your piece are really a bummer. I mean, just tell me a couple of stories that some of the educators told you about what they're seeing in the classroom.
One of the things I thought was sort of the scariest as a parent is the talking with folks about the way that grading standards have slackened. A lot of teachers told me that there's just been a softening of expectations, and they just don't expect children at all sorts of different levels to be able to perform in the same way that they used to. And the reason that's scary to me as a parent of a teenager is that, grades are one of the 2 or 3 pieces of metrics that you can use as an outsider to try to gauge how your child is doing. Test scores are another. But one of the things I heard was, this phenomenon of what they call deflation, which is, basically, kids are just getting B's for doing less work than they used to. Similarly, just hear stories about teachers who say that they can't ask children to read books on grade level, that they should be able to read at their grade level anymore. Hearing stories about a teacher in a school for gifted students, actually, and in a magnet school in New Jersey. She says that, she used to ask them to take 15 minutes to read a short story. Now it takes 40 minutes, maybe even close to a whole period. We're hearing these reports from people inside the building.
I'm telling you, it's the technology. It's the brainwave of the blue screen off of these iPads, off of the computers, off of the laptops, and also the social media. that they're watching. It's making them dumber.
Interest groups that are trying to advocate a political agenda. These are actually people who are practitioners who are raising the alarm and saying something's wrong here.
The other thing that you point out in the piece that I think a lot of people will be interested in is that the steepest academic declines are not happening in traditionally underfunded, or we'll say conservative regions that have not traditionally invested in education equally, especially for groups that have been historically marginalized, right?
I mean, it is true. We're talking really about southern states here. Mississippi is one, Louisiana is another. These are states that are not, to put it mildly, do not have a good civil rights record. But if the NAEP scores, the National Assessment Scores, show that today an economically disadvantaged fourth grader in Mississippi scores better than the economically disadvantaged fourth grader in Massachusetts or New Jersey, traditionally high-performing states.
Exactly. Places that publicly pride themselves on valuing education, spend a lot of money on education, and historically, at least publicly, value equity. You focus on a place that you know well where you live, which is Montclair, New Jersey, which spends a little more than $27,000 per pupil per year, right? Achievement has dropped by a grade level in reading and by half a grade in math since 2013. What made you take a look at that? Was that kind of the logical extension of, like, I wonder what's happening in my own backyard?
One of the things that really inspired me to do it is that there was as you alluded to a second ago, our district spends, in the 95th percentile in the country per pupil on education, and yet we have not made much of any progress closing the achievement gap. The achievement gap in our town, which is actually pretty racially diverse, has gotten wider since the pandemic, especially in math. And meanwhile, we just found out, over the summer, that we have a gigantic budget deficit that we didn't know about. So in fact, even as we're not getting results, we're also.
I don't read the New Yorker, all right, and he's probably liberal leaning, all right. But the thing is I think it's really important that everyone that's listening should read this article, because we need to fully understand what is going on in our school system, especially in the elementary school system, because that's the future. That's the future of America. And if they're coming out stupid, then we're going to have adults that are stupid and less productive. And it's time to self-correct now before it gets even worse.
We've also been spending much more money than we budgeted for education. And consequently, the whole community is having this very difficult conversation about whether we're getting the results that we're paying for from the system, and whether we've allowed the system to atrophy, and whether we've perhaps prioritized things in our spending that don't necessarily go towards learning and go towards closing achievement gaps and go towards preparing students to really thrive in college and in the rest of their lives.
You quote a superintendent who says, "Our budget reflects our priorities. I don't know how much of our priority teaching and learning has honestly been." So what has the money been going to?
Districts are spending more money on ancillary things that they didn't in years past than they ever have been before. If you talk with teachers, they'll often tell you that the schools and teachers themselves are being asked to do more than they have ever done before. There's an article that just out in the New York Times about how classifications for special education and anxiety diagnoses and depression diagnoses have really just gone through the roof in a lot of schools. And so that means schools are hiring counselors. That means that a lot more kids have IEPs and other forms of special education classifications, which mean having to hire more teachers, more personnel to address those deficits. Again, it's not a monocausal situation, but it all starts to add up. And what you end up getting is a situation in which we have ever inflating costs for public education. And crucially, I think important to note, under Republican Governor Chris Christie in the middle of the last decade, the state also put in a cap on how much municipalities can raise their property taxes, which finance schools, of 2%. So you can do the math. Inflation is going up faster than 2% in everything, in buses, personnel, every aspect.
So he thinks that the answer to the question is give more money by increasing the property tax? First of all, they shouldn't even be charging you property tax because you own your property. Why is the government taking a take? Why are they taxing you annually on property that you own? Well, wait a minute here. Do you really own the property? Or are you renting it from the government? And then on top of it, they're not even educating the kids.
And the school districts, at least here in New Jersey, this is not uncommon throughout the country, have a hard cap of how much they can raise money, and it means that they end up having to always be doing more with less.
Okay, but how does this explain the fact that some of these southern states that traditionally have not invested as heavily in public education, their kids seem to be doing better?
There are a couple different theories. One has to do with curriculum and continuing teaching of phonics and so on. Others have to do with teacher training. But a really big one that I addressed at length in the story is this idea that the more conservative states never really backed away from a system of what was called accountability for schools, largely based on test scores, although not exclusively based on test scores. But there was a long period of time when Republicans and Democrats alike had a sense that they would set high standards for schools and hold them to those high standards, rewarding them when they met them or exceeded them. And there were incentives and disincentives that were set up around these accountability benchmarks. And so the southern states, by and large, have kind of stuck with that. A lot of the northeastern states, especially since the pandemic, have moved away from using test scores in that way. Lots of complicated reasons for that. But a big one is a federal law signed by Barack Obama in 2015 that really delegated a lot of authority to the states. 2015, if you remember from what we were just talked about, we talk about the mystery of this inflection point where things started to go down. What happens to the people who believe in what I call the declining standards hypothesis, point to the signing of this law in 2015 as the kind of turning point in which educational achievement started to go in the wrong direction. And so if you want to think about what might be going wrong or what we might be able to fix, that might be a good place to start. I think a lot of the people in this education reform movement would say.
Some people forget just how heated these arguments were over, George W. Bush's administration, his kind of No Child Left Behind initiative. And a lot of people kind of in the educational policy world, teachers unions were sort of furious about it. They thought this is, teaching to the test. You're going to drive all the joy and passion out of teaching and the creativity. It's going to be all about the test. It's all about the test. But sort of now looking at it, do you think that there's been any kind of a change of heart?
I think everything that you said about sucking joy out of the classroom and teaching the test and incentivizing cheating and so on, these are all real things and real downsides to the No Child Left Behind regimen. So I'm not in any way sort of romanticizing, what there was before. But as always with any kind of policy change, there are unintended consequences. One education policy specialist told me, in the course of doing this, that in 2015 when Obama signed the law reforming No Child Left Behind, he said, there's widespread anticipation that we're moving to something better, and it turned out we're moving to something much worse.
One of the things you say in your piece, which is also surprising to me, is you reference work by an Ohio State University professor, Vladimir Kogan, showing that school boards are often elected by, quote, mostly childless, overwhelmingly white upper-income voters, unquote, creating what he calls a democratic deficit. So, how is that possible?
A lot of people vote for school boards based on their taxes, based on there's in any community, I think the number of parents in any given community is not necessarily going to be a majority because just by the nature of demographics. You have a lot of people whose children are not entered the system yet. You have a lot of people who don't have children, and so the electorates are not made up primarily or exclusively of parents. I also think, to be candid about it, that I think that in a lot of places. There's even parents who should be the most invested in the system. There's a sense of disconnection, of oftentimes these are very low turnout elections, and oftentimes parents have no idea that there's anything wrong. So now, for instance, in my community in Montclair, there are people starting public advocacy groups. There are WhatsApp groups that are getting together to talk about all these issues, print up yard signs, try to get people to the polls for this referendum where we're voting on potential tax increase in a week from now. But I would say, just candidly, I think the percentage of those people, those same people who were paying attention 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago to what was going on in the schools was quite small. And so I think that these are things you have to make a lot of effort to pay attention to. I know from having tried to make some effort to pay attention to them that the systems are not easy. It's not easy to go to a 4-hour school board meeting on a weeknight if you're a working parent. So anyway, the point is that we get the system that we get in part because the system is set up to make us to make us disinvested in that.
Andrew Rice, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks a lot.
I think it's really important to understand what's going on in our school system and how and understand the performance of these students. If we can catch it early, we can correct the problem. But if you get these individuals, these students that have way below standard scores for math, science, and reading, and they get into their adulthood life, it's almost over. It's almost over. It's very hard to correct it. And then you have a society that is less productive. All right, we're going to go to France 24, but before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will help with your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation. It's also important to help with your cardiovascular health. Turmeric brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. Very similar effects as of lignans. It helps the cardiovascular health and boosts up that immune system. By bringing down inflammation regularly, you're helping your brain function. And ashwagandha root, ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels and helps to control your blood glucose levels. By taking ashwagandha root regularly, you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Now, taking lignans, ashwagandha root, and turmeric together is a powerful stack to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular health. And again, by bringing down inflammation regularly, you're helping your neural health. Please go to my store and get the dual-purpose deodorants. These deodorants are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high-quality ingredients in these deodorants. Use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's for males and females. Take it every day, and and detoxify your body. And we're in the winter season in the United States. Go to my store and get the structural nanosilver drops. You have a throat irritation, take them right away. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need them. You can get it in honey and lemon, cherry flavor, or blueberry. Very high quality drops. You use them when you have that throat irritation. Also use them if someone around you is not feeling well, because you don't want to get what they have, right? Get a few bags for your household. Use discount 5 on any order. You get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, with that, let's go to France 24.
Nietzsche famously said of his own books, I write in a single sentence what it takes other men a book to write.
All right, let's go deeper with this story now. We're joined by Reed Brody, who's a war crimes prosecutor and former New York State Assistant Attorney General. Thank you very much for speaking to us on France 24. Based on what we know so far, can we say this double tap strike constitutes a war crime?
Yeah, well, it would constitute a war crime if this were a war. In fact, as we can get into, the laws of war don't actually apply here because the United States is not at war with drug dealers. President Trump has taken a metaphor, the war on drugs, and tried to convert it into an actual war. But whether the wars, if the wars of law were to apply, it would be a war crime. And even if they don't apply, it would be murder. So either way, what we are looking at here is a crime. Even in an armed conflict, targeting.
Why isn't Obama being prosecuted for war crimes? He did the same thing. He double tapped in the Middle East by a drone strike, hit the caravan, didn't kill everybody, and they went back and hit it again. But Obama's okay. So if it's okay for Obama, why the hell can't Donald Trump do it? Oh, Orange Man bad and Barack Obama good.
Correct individuals is categorically illegal. The United States Defense Department, in its manual, explicitly cites the shooting of shipwrecked persons as an example of a clearly illegal order. And outside an armed conflict, the legal standard is even stricter. I mean, these survivors presented zero threat. Killing them would constitute a homicide under U.S. federal law, and under international human rights law, it would be the arbitrary deprivation of life. And so whether or not, I mean, there's a lot.
What about the 80,000 people that die from drug abuse? What about the 80,000 people that die annually in the United States? Where's the outcry with that? Where's the prosecutions? See, these people, they're talking about the legality of stuff. They're so smart, they're stupid. The end result is a failed society. Kill your enemy and don't worry about it. I mean, these people, they're wussies.
The dispute, as you've reported over the last day or two, initially has been reported that Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War, as he likes to call himself, Pete Hegseth, had ordered the second strike. Now they seem to be shifting blame to the military commander, Bradley. In either event, if it were an order from Hegseth, Bradley would have a duty to refuse the order because it is manifestly illegal. If it was Bradley, Hegseth would have the duty to prosecute him because this was an illegal act.
So tell us more about how Pete Hegseth could be held personally to account over this. I mean, you know, the White House did seem to shift responsibility slightly during that press conference, saying it was the U.S. Admiral who ordered the strike, but again, under Hegseth's command.
Oh, that's right. I mean, you know, under U.S. Military and international law, let's say that Hegseth ordered it, there is no defense. Bradley would have no defense. They have superior orders. You know, I was just following orders. It was explicitly rejected at Nuremberg. And when the illegality is obvious, such as killing shipwreck survivors, one has a duty as a commander or as a soldier. You know, and very interestingly, last week, several U.S. Congressmen, people, and senators who had served in the armed forces and in the intelligence community reminded members of the military that they can refuse illegal orders. And of course, that's true since Nuremberg. Trump called that video seditious and said that they should be punished by death. Now, if Bradley was acting on his own to carry out the second strike, of course, he's responsible. But then his superiors would be obliged, rather than to say, as Hegseth did, that Bradley was well within his rights, he would have the responsibility then to investigate Bradley for potential war crimes.
And CNN has made the comparison of this September strike with a similar one on also an alleged drug boat in October, which also left survivors apparently. The outlet reports that in this case, the military actually didn't follow up with a follow-up strike like in September. Instead, it rescued the men and sent them back to their home countries. From a legal point of view, what does this tell you? Why wouldn't the administration detain them if these people were so-called narco-terrorists as claimed?
Well, of course, that's exactly what should be done. You know, the U.S. has the power and the authority to make drug smuggling a crime. We have the power and the authority to interdict boats that are bringing drugs into this country. We have the power and the authority to try people. If they're convicted by a jury, they can be sentenced to prison. What we don't have any legal authority to do, and I think this is the bigger question here, this entire operation rests on the idea that the United States can just execute people from the skies without any trial, without any evidence, without any showing that they pose some
drone boy Barack Obama. Why doesn't he say anything about Barack Obama? Because Barack Obama did the exact same thing that Trump did. Oh, Barack Obama's okay.
Sort of imminent danger to anybody. Former Philippine President Duterte is before the International Criminal Court on trial for doing exactly the same thing, murdering alleged drug traffickers. And you know, so and of course we are not at war. And even if we were in war, people on these boats are civilians. They are not attacking us. Under international rules, you cannot target civilians unless they are actually engaged in hostilities against you, unless they're actually shooting at you. And that's not what's going on here. These are sitting ducks, and we are simply engaged in cold-blooded murder of individuals who may or may not be drug smugglers.
So then in this case, what could happen next? I mean, is there any legal recourse against these attacks?
Well, I mean, if we had a justice system in the United States that was independent, or I mean, we do have a courts that are independent, but of course the prosecutor, Donald Trump has been treating the Department of Justice and the federal prosecutors as like his private attorneys, and so I don't expect that there will be any court-martials, that there will be any investigations. You know, and I think I also want to make a larger point here, which you set up in your piece about.
No, his larger point is simple. His larger point is simple. Orange man bad, Barack Obama good. That's his point.
Nothing to do with combating illegal drugs. Venezuela accounts for only a small fraction of the flow of drugs coming into the United States. This morning, Trump pardoned the former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted by a U.S. court of bringing in 500 tons of cocaine. He was serving a 45-year sentence for running a cocaine network. He once bragged about sending coke up the nose of gringos. At the same time, we're pardoning somebody who's been convicted of bringing, hundreds of tons of cocaine to the United States, and we're killing people who are hanging on to boats. I mean, this whole situation is about bullying and threatening the regime of Nicolas Maduro, not about drugs.
All right, Reed Brody, a war crimes prosecutor and former.
Why can't you get other benefits from knocking out Venezuela? All right, you stop the drug running, you control the rare earth metals and material, you control the energy sector, and you also push Russia and China out of our hemisphere. And oh, by the way, don't you think that Venezuela is an important base or an area to control, especially when we need to go between the Atlantic and the Pacific when we go to war with China? This is a larger piece of a larger strategy. And we're going to need those materials for our war effort against China. So if it means taking over Venezuela to make sure that our hegemonic power goes for another 250 years, so be it. I don't care. Actually, I promote it. I would like Trump to do this. Oh, you got all the American first, and we just only need to focus on our domestic policies. You don't understand the reason why we have the economy we have, the reason why we have the prosperity we have is because of the hegemonic power that we obtained after World War II. If we lose that, if we lose this, the ease of navigation, especially around the 9-dash line in the Pacific, we're going to lose our way of life. Now, blowing away a few Venezuelans to maintain our way of life, so be it. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with the American empire? What's wrong with that? See, people that want to denigrate that policy, they're wusses. They're wusses. All right. Before we go to Luigi, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't be a wuss. Take the supplements, build the muscle, slow down the aging process, get healthy, and fight for the empire. Vitamin B complex will boost up your energy levels, rev up your cellular metabolism, and protect your neurons. Super important if you're 40 years of age or older. Take vitamin B complex every day. Drink it with filtered water. Clarity factor gets rid of that brain fog so you're not a crazy, stupid liberal. Now, clarity factor, by getting rid of that brain fog, you're going to be able to concentrate. And when you can concentrate, you're just more productive. But there's a great benefit by taking this every day. Your neuroplasticity will improve. Your dendritic connections for your neurons will improve. That means you're going to be thinking faster and you'll have better memory. Take the clarity factor. This is part of a great way to improve your brain function and slow down the aging process. Take it every day. It's a very powerful neurostack. All right, let's listen to Luigi Mangione.
This just in, we're getting our first look today at Luigi Mangione inside court for a hearing in his New York State murder case. He's the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last year. Attorneys for Mangione are trying to get key evidence like his diary entries tossed from a state murder case. CNN's Kara Scannell filed this report just before heading into court.
Luigi Mangione is back in court this morning as his lawyers try to get some key evidence in this case thrown out. The focus is when Mangione was approached by law enforcement at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's there that his lawyers argue his constitutional rights were violated. They say the Altoona police searched his backpack illegally because they didn't have a warrant. They also say they violated his rights by asking him questions without reading his Miranda rights, that is his right to remain silent. So what his lawyers want to keep out of this case and away from his jury are those contents that were found in the backpack: a gun, a silencer, and a notebook that had Mangione's handwriting samples in there. The prosecutors say that that was his manifesto and explained his motive for why he allegedly shot and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson last December. Mangione wrote in that notebook, "Whack the CEO at annual parasitic bean counter convention." He also wrote, "It conveys a greedy bastard that had it coming." Mangione's lawyers also want to keep away from the jury a statement that he initially gave to law enforcement when he identified himself as Mark Rosario. That's the name of the person who rented a hostel room that authorities say the shooter stayed in just days before United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down. Prosecutors say that nothing improper happened. They are expected to call as many as 24 witnesses. Mangione will be in court. He's been given permission by the judge to wear a suit. He's asked to have one hand unshackled so he can take notes. The judge has not yet ruled on that, but this hearing could last several days. Wolf?
All right, Kara Scannell, I know you're going to be heading into that courtroom. I will be checking back with you often. Thank you very, very much. I want to bring in CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson right now. Joey, break down what the defense is arguing for us right now. Why are they trying to get this evidence thrown out?
So, well, prior to any trial, you have what are called pretrial proceedings. At those pretrial proceedings, the prosecution has to establish that any evidence seized was seized properly, that there was probable cause underlying any seizure. Here, the issue in dispute is a backpack. Why is the defense trying to keep it out? Because it has damning evidence and information, as Kara Scannell just laid out. You have a backpack that has a gun. It has the silencer. It has the manifesto, quote unquote, which gives the real intention behind this killing of the healthcare executive. And so it's very damning if the jury would see it, in addition to his identification. They are alleging that as a defense, that it was an improper search, that the bag was not in his possession technically. It was on a table that was nearby. It posed no danger to them. They should have gotten a warrant prior to going into the backpack. And as a result of not getting a warrant, it would be illegal and improper. And the remedy, in the event the judge determines that the bag was seized and opened and looked into illegally, the remedy is to exclude that from the jury's view. The jury is not there today. It's just the judge. And the prosecutors have to lay out the information to establish that that seizure of the bag and anything associated with it was done properly. Now, the prosecution will argue that they had an emergency circumstance. It could have been a bomb or something else in that backpack. In addition, the prosecution will argue that it would have inevitably been discovered, meaning it would have been taken back, it would have been inventoried, etc. But the defense is alleging that, hey, in the event that happened, they still would have needed to get a warrant, which they subsequently did several hours later. The defense says, hey, it's too late. You open up that backpack, it's not coming in. Final point, Wolf, and that is there also, that's called a MAP hearing. In other pretrial proceedings, called a Humphrey hearing. That is to determine whether any statements that he made, that is Mr. Mangione, were in fact made properly. Now, if you're going to question a suspect, we've all seen this, you have to issue them their Miranda warnings, but only if it's a custodial interrogation. That means they're in custody and they are being interrogated. Here, the defense alleges they should not have spoken to him at all, such that they would elicit information as to a false name or anything else, and that the statement additionally should be thrown out. And so all these witnesses are going to establish, the prosecution hopes, the propriety and legality of the search of the bag, the propriety and legality of the statements, and in the event they do, those statements will be shown to the jury. In the event they don't, the jury will not see them, they will be concealed, and the prosecution must go forward with other evidence, but not that evidence that was in the bag.
And that evidence is obviously very, very important. The hearing is expected to last several days now. Tell us why.
Well, generally, these hearings do not last several days. I think this case is a case like none other. Generally, these hearings last a day. Sometimes they go on more. But here, you have...
This case is like none other because he's from a prominent family that made a ton of money on nursing homes. See, people don't understand that when you have to be taken care of in your geriatric years in a nursing home, the nursing home gets a lot of money. They charge $5,000, $7,000, sometimes $10,000 a month. And it bleeds down the savings of the patient. And as they start to decline further and they bleed down their savings, they have to sell their assets. Now, sometimes those assets are transferred to the nursing home. The Social Security gets transferred to the nursing home. So Luigi Mangione, all right, he came from a prominent family that was fleecing the elderly. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And what the weird thing is then he ends up blowing away a CEO that wasn't providing relief to people that had insurance and they were getting declined. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this case. But this is not your typical case because he comes from a prominent family. And guess what? There's a lot of baby boomers that are going to be retiring. There's a lot of baby boomers that are already retired. There are a lot of baby boomers starting to go into nursing homes. There is a major wealth transfer. And it's not to the next of kin. It's to the nursing homes and the owners of the nursing homes. So Luigi Mangione and all of the privilege that he had as a kid came from stealing from the elderly. No one wants to talk about that.
You have the Pennsylvania jurisdiction. I think we'll hear testimony as to the officers who initially approached him, where he was, why they searched the bag, what he was doing, why they felt the necessity of doing that. And so they have to establish it as the prosecution that the search was done with probable cause because they want that evidence and information in. Now, you don't have to show proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not that type of hearing, but you certainly have to give enough to the judge to show that it was proper, it was authentic, it was lawful, and it was predicated upon probable cause. In the absence of that, the judge will exclude that has prevented the jury from seeing this, but the trial will still move forward.
Very quickly, before I let you go, Joey, does the prosecution acknowledge they never told Mangione he has a right to remain silent?
Indeed, they do. But however, there are other arguments, even though they eventually did, but at the time that they were making an accusation towards him, if it's a custodial interrogation, doesn't mean you're in cuffs, but if you're not free to leave and they're asking questions that could incriminate you, you have to give Miranda. However, if you're simply investigating a case and not really questioning him such that you're eliciting guilty statements, you don't. And so there's a fine line with respect to investigatory information being supplied and incriminatory, meaning you're looking for evidence to incriminate them. The police say, we just needed to know what the lay of the land was, and that was the basis upon which we asked those questions.
Interesting. All right, Joey, thank you very, very much.
Let's get some expert insight from criminal defense attorney Robert Bianchi, who's also a former homicide prosecutor.
All right. We're going to go to the housing showdown in New York City. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. This is super important to slow down the aging process, to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. Take the Goodnight Formula every night. People that are sleep deprived chronically, you're increasing your chances of early onset of dementia. You don't want that, trust me. So please go to my store, get the Goodnight Formula, and slow down the aging process and improve your brain function. Digestive enzyme complex helps the health of your pancreas. When you turn about age 40, your pancreas doesn't perform as well. Why? Well, your pancreas has a half-life, all right? No matter how healthy you are. Now, the more unhealthy that you are, the less care that you give to your pancreas, the more problems that you will have at age 40. People drink a lot, you're probably burning out your pancreas. But the point here is that even if you're healthy, your pancreas doesn't perform as well as when it was younger. So you need to help it. You need to provide digestive enzymes to reduce the load on the pancreas. Now, digestive enzyme complex has the enzymes to break up the proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids to reduce the load on your pancreas. Therefore, you're able to digest better. It reduces the stress on your digestive system, and you're absorbing the nutrients properly. Super important. And digestive enzyme complex has bromelain. Bromelain is an enzyme to help to break up clots. It's fibrinolytic. And the proteolytic enzymes in digestive enzyme complex will help to break up the glycoproteins. That's super important in the fall and the winter season because you contract certain things that you need to break up. This is the reason why I said take the digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. Why? Because of the bromelain and because of the proteolytic enzymes. Oh, amazing how that works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you pay attention to me, you're actually going to get healthier. It's really simple. It's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, learning new things, and getting proper sleep. Simple. Now, if you have noticed, my aging is slow down. Now, why is that? Because my protocol works. Now, if you look at people that are trying to sell supplements, right? They look a lot older, probably because they don't understand how to use them, and they don't have the educational background. And then you look at the celebrity docs that are doing their podcasts. Why do they look older? Why does it look like they're not slowing down the aging? Because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. Follow my advice, you'll get healthy. It's that simple.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my...
New York City becoming the epicenter of a booming new real estate trend. Office space is being converted into residential living. Wall Street Journal reporting over the past 20 years, developers in the Big Apple have converted nearly 30 million square feet of space into places to live. But Cushman & Wakefield is reporting an uptick in office occupancy, hitting a 78% rate in the third quarter, close to a 4.5% yearly increase. Joining us now is Cushman & Wakefield Chairman of Global Brokerage, Bruce Mosler. Bruce, it's great to see you.
Great to be back.
So talk to us about this trend that we saw particularly pick up after the pandemic, and that was taking these empty offices, making them into residential apartments. Not easy to do, but Mayor Adams changed the zoning to make it easier to do.
He did, and it was a very smart move. Look, we know we have a 1% vacancy in the housing stock. We know that to maintain our status as the financial and tech capital of the world, that we have to have housing, affordable housing for young people.
Let's pause this for a second. Trump is talking right now in his cabinet meeting.
Don't order eggs for Easter at the White House. And we ended up doing it, and we got the egg prices way down, lower than what they were before. But the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. They say affordable. I watched the other day where some very low IQ congresswoman talked about affordability. She had no idea. Their prices were much higher. As an example, energy, gasoline, we're now at about $2.50 a gallon. We're going to be, I think, at $2 a gallon. We could even crack that at some point. I'd love to do it. And we could do it more easily if we weren't building up the strategic national reserves, which Biden emptied out before the election so that he could try and get elected, meaning he started it, then he got thrown out of the race. And she took over and she kept it going, and they emptied out these strategic national reserves, which are really meant for something else. They're not meant to keep people happy with their gasoline price. They're meant for war. They're meant for problems, big problems. He emptied it out, and then she continued it during the process of trying to get elected. Didn't work out too well for him. And they virtually brought it down to the lowest level, I believe, in history. And it didn't have much of an impact because the prices were very high. But our prices now for energy, for gasoline are really low. Electricity's coming down. And when that comes down, everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it, and then they go into the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they have lower prices. No, they have the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now, some people will correct me, because I always love to correct me, even though I'm right about everything. But some people like to correct me, and they say 48 years. I say it's not 48 years, it's much more. But they say it's the worst inflation that we've had in 48 years. I say ever. But whether it's 48 years or ever, it's pretty bad. We had the worst inflation that we've ever had. Since last January, we stopped inflation in its tracks. And there's still more to do. There's always more to do, but we have it down to a very good level. It's going to go down a little
What's
bit.
interesting is that Trump doesn't go into the details why he says that it's ever. Now, if you look at inflation in terms of absolute dollars being spent over and above the baseline, he's right. If you're looking at inflation as a percentage, the inflation rate, no, it was higher in other epochs. But the point here is that it was too damn high.
Grocery prices are down with the cost of Thanksgiving turkey this year down 33%. It was lower than 33% lower than under the Biden administration. Egg prices are way down 86%. Thank you. And mortgage rates, despite the fact that we have an incompetent chairman of the Fed, a real dope, who should reduce rates. I saw even Jamie Dimon said he should be reducing rates. I never saw Jamie Dimon say that. I wonder why he said that. But he really said it because he's right. But we have a guy that's just a stubborn ox who probably doesn't like your president, your favorite president. But they're going to be coming down. We'll be announcing somebody probably early next year for the new chairman of the Fed. I talked to Scott about taking the job, but he doesn't want it. You got the greatest job here.
Yes, sir.
Right? He said, no, I wanted to stay chairman. I want to stay right where we are, Treasury. And I think we're doing really great, aren't we?
We're doing great, sir. It's a great team to be part of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Under my executive order to lower prescription drug prices, which I think is the single biggest thing we've ever done that nobody writes about because you're fake news. I've made unprecedented deals along with Bobby and Oz and all of the people that work on it. A lot of people that you wouldn't even think work on it, but they do, to slash drug prices by.
Right now, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,820. Bitcoin's trading at 91,000.
Because I instituted favored nations, and no nation agreed to do it. And then I said to the nations, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to charge you 100% tariff, which is more money than we're talking about. And they said, sir, we'd love to do it. Please, we would be honored to do it. And they agreed that they would go along with the whole thing. Nobody thought you could do it because they felt, number one, you couldn't get the drug companies to do it. So we're paying, as an example, for the, let's call it the fat drug, F-A-T, for fat people. Anybody using the table? Don't ask. But the fat drug was $135. Think of that. For certain people, $1,300 for certain countries, $1,300 in New York. So in New York it was $1,300, and in London it was $135. A friend of mine called me, said, what is this? Why is it? He got used to paying $1,300. Well, now what we have it down to is, Bobby, what's the number? Like 50 or something, we have it down to a low number, don't we?
Yeah, it's right about 125, 100.
Yeah, look at that. So we got it down from $1,300 to $125 to $140, depending on various countries. In other words, we're paying the lowest price, tied for the lowest price in the world. And people said you could never do that because you couldn't get the countries to agree to it. I did. Every country agreed to it because I said, if you're not going to agree to it, that's okay. I'm going to charge you tariffs. And as soon as they said that, they said, we agree. And then we had to be a little tough with the drug companies, but they came along. And the bigger problem was the countries. The countries just wouldn't go along with it, but they did. Every country. So we have reduced drug prices by 500, 600, 700, 800, 900%, depending on the drug, depending on the company, depending on all of the different factors involved. Nobody's ever even thought of drug reductions like that, price reductions. And I told you the story that in my first term, I was so proud of myself because I reduced drugs. It was the first time in 28 years that drug prices were reduced. It was 1/4 of 1%, 1/4 of 1%. And I was so proud of myself. I said, it's the first time in 28 years that drug prices went down over the course of a year, over the course of a presidency. 1 year, 1/4 of 1%. I had a news conference. I was so proud. Now I got them down, not 1/4 of 1%. I got them down 400, 500, 600% and more. And the fake news won't write about it. And it's going to have a huge impact on healthcare because a big part of it's buying drugs, buying prescription drugs. It's going to have a huge positive impact because Obamacare is a disaster. I said it years ago and I say it now. And the money should be paid, taken away from the insurance company. Obamacare was made to make the insurance companies rich. Their stocks have gone up 1,000% in a short period of time because the money goes to the insurance company. I want the money to go to the people. Let all the money go to the people. And let the people go out and buy their own health care. And I see on television, people are advertising now, we will help you buy health care. We will go out and help you buy. That's becoming like an industry because of what I said. So something's going to happen. It's probably not going to be easy because the Democrats, frankly, they don't want to make a good deal for the people. They just want to make a bad deal for the country. They want to make a bad deal for the Republican Party. But the Republican Party is united. And I will say that what I would like to do is the money doesn't go, trillions of dollars get paid to drug companies. And you still have lousy health care. Obamacare is horrible health care. We want it to go to the people and then let the people go out and buy their own health care and they'll do great. They'll do great. So we're negotiating that now with the Democrats. Well, congressional Democrats want the largest tax hike in history. I proudly signed the largest tax cuts in American history with the Great Big Beautiful Bill. The Great Big Beautiful Bill, the biggest piece of legislation ever signed, and that includes the extension of the original Trump tax cuts. But it's the biggest tax cut ever signed, and it includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, so think of that. And in addition, you get, if you buy a car, this is great for our car industry because we have a lot of car plants. We're bringing back the automobile business. 60% of it was stolen because we had incompetent presidents or incompetent trade people. But 60% of it was stolen over the years, and now I think we're bringing it all back. I think we'll be bigger than we've ever been in the auto business. That's not even to mention AI, where we're leading China. You know, we're leading China by a lot. They're not going to catch us. We have to be smart, but if we're smart, they're not going to be able to catch us. They know that. They told me that. Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people, in addition to reducing debt. As you know, I inherited a lot of debt, but it's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers we're talking about. So we're going to be making a dividend to the people. And additionally, we're going to be able to reduce debt. And as time goes by over the next 2, 3, 4 years, those numbers are going to go up. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay. Because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax. We've slashed $1 trillion in costly job-killing regulations, saving Americans an estimated $2,100 for a family of 4. The Biden administration was the exact opposite, but times 4. They went up $6,000, we went down $2,100. Think of that. To bring down energy, electricity, and utility prices, I ended the Green New Scam. They call it the Green New Scam, one of the greatest scams in the history of our country. They talked about global warming and all that crap, and what they've done to this country. What they've done by allowing 25 million people into our country, many of whom are criminals, many of whom 11,888 are murderers, and we have to get them out, and we're doing it. We're doing it. I think what the job that our law enforcement groups are doing, Christy, you and Tom and everybody, amazing. What you're doing is amazing. I terminated the insane electric vehicle mandate, and look, some people that make electric cars weren't happy with that. But we have to do that because you have to have a choice, whether it's a gasoline-powered car, and we have so much gasoline. You know, China doesn't have gasoline. We do. And whether it's a hybrid, which really are working really well, the combination of electric and gasoline-driven. But we, everybody was supposed to, by 2030, everybody had to own an electric car under the Biden stupidity. And not everybody wants to do that. I like electric cars. I like all cars. They're all good. They all have reasons. But you want to be able to go and buy what you want. I oppose historic tariffs that are now bringing in so much money that nobody's ever seen anything like it. And countries that were ripping us off, including allies, but they were ripping us off for years. I won't use the names. I won't mention Japan. I will refuse to mention South Korea. I will not mention names. But they were ripping us off like nobody's ever been ripped off before, and taking horrible advantage of your country. But now we're making a lot of money because of the tariffs that are pouring in. And it's really national security. Among everything else, it's national security. We've also rapidly turned the worst border crisis in world history. I believe we have the worst border ever in history. I don't care if you had a 4th world country. You know, we allow 3rd world country in. We would allow 4th world war countries in also. It doesn't matter. There was never a border that was as bad as our border. We allowed anybody in with no checks, no vetting. So we've rapidly turned the worst border crisis in world history into the strongest border in the history of our country, and probably one of the strongest borders in the history of the world, because we have nobody coming through. And I want to thank our people. The Border Patrol is so amazing, ICE, and I want to thank the military for the backup, because they're standing right behind them, and that was really nasty for a period of months, and now it's no longer nasty. Now they don't even come up. Nobody comes up. It's an easy job. Made your job a lot easier because they know they're not going to get through. And we take people in, but they have to come in legally. For 6 months in a row, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted into the United States. You believe that? 0. We had millions of people coming in a year, millions. Now we have 0 for 6 months, and these are given by radical left people that do the numbers. I mean, they're not doing them any favor. They're being up. We don't have our net numbers are unbelievable. But we had 0 people in the last 6 months. Illegal border crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border have plummeted to the lowest level ever recorded. And nobody talks about that anymore. You know, it's crazy. They don't talk about it. You think they'd say, well, Trump's done a great job at the border. This country is being destroyed by the border. But you always find something new. Like, is he in good health? Biden was great. but he's probably good at it. I sit here, I do 4 news conferences a day, I ask questions from very intelligent lunatics. I get the right answers. There's never a scandal, there's never a problem. I give you answers that solve your little problems. You go back and you can't find anything, but you do stories about Biden was in wonderful health. The guy didn't do a news conference for 8 months. If I go one day, I had one day where I didn't do a news conference, there's something wrong with the president. You people are crazy. I'll let you know when there's something wrong. There will be someday. That's going to happen to all of us. But right now, I think I'm sharper than I was 25 years ago. But who the hell does? By the way, I took my physical. I got all A's, everything. But they said to me, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, is it hard? They said, yes. I said, well, I'm a very smart person. Who was the last president to take one? No president has ever agreed to take one. Because when you get into the big questions, meaning 10, question number 10, 11, 12, 28, 30, they get harder and harder. And they said, would you like to do it? I said, well, no reason to do it. Nobody's ever done it. I'll do it maybe, but there's really no reason. I said, sir, the problem is this is Walter Reed Hospital. And that's a military hospital. And that means that things are, sort of open. It's not like private where if you do poorly, we'll have to, probably you'll find out. I said, I won't do poorly. I'm a smart person, not a stupid person. And as the doctor will tell you, I aced it. Right, Susie? I aced. I got every question right. And these are tough questions. These are questions that I would say 99% of the people that I'm talking to right now, meaning the people from the fake news, would not do well in those exams. But I'm the only one that took it. I got every single question right. And then I read in the New York Times, is Trump sharp? Trump is sharp, but they're not sharp. That's why they're going out of business, the New York Times. They're losing so much money, it's ridiculous. They're a bunch of fakers. But we can never let another thing happen like what happened to us with a fake election, with a rigged election, where a guy like Joe Biden assumes the presidency. Because the man was grossly incompetent. And he was incompetent 30 years ago. But he was really incompetent for those last few years, and our country was put in great danger because of it. So for 6 months in a row, we had 0 people. Illegal border crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border have plummeted to the lowest level ever. Think of that. And the net benefit to our country is enormous, incalculable. America is strong and respected again. On the world stage, we're really respected. In fact, I went to a NATO and they were calling me the president of Europe. We're doing very well. We have a lot of respect. As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine. We are not involved in the war monetarily anymore. Biden gave away $350 billion like it was candy. That's a massive amount of money. And much of it in cash, a lot of it in equipment. I don't give away anything. We sell the equipment to NATO. The European nations pay us for the equipment, 100% price. And then they bring it to Ukraine or whatever they do with it. We're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th. And our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation, let me tell you. What a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. We renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War, and I thought that would be controversial. And frankly, I tell you what, I haven't met one person. There's not one person I've met that doesn't like it. Think of it. We won World War I, World War II, everything in between, everything before it. And then we said, let's change the name. So we changed it back to what it was, Department of War and Peace, doing a great job. We ended 8 wars, think of that. 8 wars, but we're gonna do one more, I think. I hope. Every time I end a war, they say if President Trump ends that war, he's gonna get the Nobel Prize. If I end that war. Well, he won't get it for that war, but if he ever gets it for the next war, now they're saying, if he ever ends the war with Russia and Ukraine, he's gonna get the Nobel Prize. What about the other 8 wars? India, Pakistan, think of all the wars I ended. I should get the Nobel Prize for every war, but I don't want to be greedy. Actually, the woman who got the Nobel Prize said, "You've got to be kidding. Trump deserves the Nobel Prize." So that was very nice of her. I appreciate it, which is true, actually. But I don't care about that. You know what I care about? I care about death. I care about all the people that are dying. And last month, 27,000 young people died, mostly young people, mostly soldiers, despite some missiles being shot into Kiev and other places. But think of it, mostly young people. 27,000 people died between Russia and Ukraine last month. What a shame. So we're restoring law and order to our cities and towns. If you look at what's happened, and I want to pay my deepest respects to those 2 incredible people from the National Guard in West Virginia they came from. I spoke to their parents. Sarah is gone. She passed away. She's looking down on us now, and she loves her parents, and they loved her. They were, somebody said, "How are they doing?" I said, "The word is devastated." Doing. How are they going to do? They're devastated. The rest of their lives they're going to be devastated. She was an incredible person, highly respected, top of her class, everything. She was like a perfect human being. 20 years old, just started. She was like a baby. She was so proud. They were giving her a promotion. She told the parents that she was getting a promotion, and they were so proud of her. Then they get a call that this happened. And we have one young man who's fighting for his life. He's fighting very hard. I think he's probably doing better than anybody. And they said he didn't have a chance. I'll tell you, the one who said he's going to live is his mother. Spoke to his mother. "Sir, he's going to live." I spoke to her very soon after this horrible event took place with this scum that was able to come into our country. I spoke to his mother. "Sir, he's going to be okay. I'm telling you." No doctor thought that. Nobody thought that. He was in bad places, and she was like so positive. It was incredible. And it's possibly right, ma'am, right? Possibly right. Boy, it would be amazing. If he lives, it would be amazing. A miracle, actually. But we're very proud of those 2 people. We're very proud of the National Guard. We're very proud of our military and our police and our firemen and women. If you go back and take a look a year ago, year and a half ago, it will change, I think, on November 5th, the day of the election. But you go back before that, you couldn't get people to join the military, right? They didn't want anything to do with military. They wanted nothing to do with joining the police or the fire. They wanted nothing to do with anything. They had no spirit. The country had no spirit, nothing. And now we just had the highest recruitment in history. And we're getting great people. We're getting great people. And I will say, despite what just happened, Washington, D.C. has become a really safe place. And I guess this lunatic probably was upset that the National Guard is so effective, because we were really, really effective, and we are. And Washington, D.C. is now considered a very, very safe city. We had crime.
Let me just plug a couple products here really quickly here. Vitamin D3, super important to take during the winter season. It also helps to absorb calcium to help build bone density. Do some resistance training, drink milk or take in calcium, and take vitamin D3, super important for your health. Vitamin D3 also helps to get rid of cells that are infected. So taking vitamin D3 regularly for your overall health protocol is super important. Olive leaf extract brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. That will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. So a great stack would be to take the vitamin D3 and the olive leaf extract. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you do get a free gift until supplies last.
Low IQ people don't make good parents. So I want to thank all of our cabinet members. Hi, IQ. Let me say what. Generally speaking, couple I'm a little concerned. No, but I want to thank, we have a great cabinet, amazing cabinet, amazing people. All of them, you know, sort of have become stars. We're getting credit for the good cabinet, actually. And I just want to wish everybody a great holiday. We've I think done a great job with the White House, bringing the White House back. You see the palm court that was redone. The Lincoln bedroom was redone. The Lincoln bathroom is now gorgeous, like it should have been. It was terrible green tile that was never the way it was supposed to be. It was done in the 1940s, actually, but it was not proper. And we're restoring the White House just like we're restoring the country, and people are thrilled. But the First Lady's done a beautiful job with the Christmas trees and all the decorations. I see the wreaths on the windows. I've never seen that before. On the windows of the White House. And you know, it's 4 stories high. I said, how did they get that wreath? They had people going up in a little dangerous. I wouldn't want to jump. But they put them up, and we have wonderful people working in the White House, and they're really proud to bring the building back. Because this building was a little bit like the country. It was mishandled, it was mistreated, and now it's being given love. And we're building one of the great, I think, maybe the greatest ballroom. We needed it for 150 years at Ganesh. Can you see the trucks and cranes and excavators in the background? And you hear them, and every time I hear them, I love the sound. Yeah, I love the sound. I wouldn't say my wife is thrilled. But she hears pile drivers in the background all day, all night. They go till 12 o'clock in the evening, day, night, pile drivers. Darling, could you turn off the pile drivers? Sorry, darling, that's progress. But no, we're doing great. It's going to be I think it's going to be the finest ballroom ever built, and we're going to have it here. They wanted it for 150 years, thinking that. So I will just end by saying I want to thank the cabinet. It's been a great cabinet. Our last, think of it, time flies, but this is our last of the year, as I said, and I just think you've done a fantastic job. And we're going to go around the room. We'll go quickly, but we're going to go around the room, and we'll start with Pete, and you'll tell us about some of the achievements. And some of you have achievements that are so big, I don't want you to go through the whole thing because we don't have time. But we'll start with Pete, and then if you want, we'll take some questions at the end. Yes, Pete.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As you said, it has been a historic year at the Department of War. Recruiting and retention over this year are at the most historic levels our country has ever seen. I had a chance to be on a aircraft carrier destroyer over Thanksgiving. The spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. We've ripped out the DEI and political correctness. It's all merit-based at the department. We're getting back to basics: accountability, training, readiness, lethality, and that's reviving that spirit. Mr. President, we're rebuilding the military, historic investments. I just took briefings on the Golden Dome and F-47, next generation capabilities that are going to make sure that for generations to come, America has the most powerful, most capable, most lethal military in the world, which you have rebuilt once and we're rebuilding again. And then we're reestablishing deterrence and credibility. If you look at what happened, we deal with every day the outcome of what happened in Afghanistan, the debacle under Joe Biden. We just dealt with it in the streets of Washington, D.C. with those 2 National Guardsmen. And then what happened on October 7th with Hamas, what happened in Ukraine, a war that never would have started under President Trump. We're having to rebuild that. So whether it's freedom of navigation and taking the fight to the Houthis, whether it's Midnight Hammer, those beautiful B-2s going 37 hours back and forth, undetected, delivering with precision, and Iran not getting nuclear capabilities, Europe and NATO stepping up to 5%, locking down our southwest borders. It's been an honor to work with Christy and Tom and everyone else down there to lock it to zero, operational control of our border. And then it's going after narco terrorists and designated terrorist organizations in our own hemisphere. As I've said, I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves. And allow them to come across the border, cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations. And And it's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco terrorists, and we're saying,
you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir,
but down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now. Which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I would just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations that we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Howard? So we set out to stop the ripoff of the United States of America. This is
listening in on President Trump's cabinet meeting today, live in Washington. This is live sound, live video if you're with us on YouTube.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. This is dual purpose. This will help with your skin, your nails, your hair, also your musculature, your bone density, your cartilage, and your joint health. Take it every day, do some resistance training, and get healthy. It's a very high quality collagen. It's a month's supply. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
That this could be an any day now situation. He said, quote, we'll be announcing somebody probably early next year for the new chairman of the Fed. We have a guy, he said, that's just a stubborn ox who probably doesn't like your president. Speaking to National Guardsman Andrew Wolf, who's now listed in serious condition, having been ambushed last week in the fatal attack here in downtown Washington, D.C. If he lives, it'll be amazing. A miracle, actually, the president said. Washington, D.C. has become a really safe place despite what has happened. And with regard to the destruction of these alleged drug boats coming out of Venezuela and the second missile attack against a boat that has drawn some concern on Capitol Hill, in fact, prompted 2 separate investigations. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, saying we have only...
Of course, they don't bring up that Barack Obama did the same thing with drone strikes on a caravan in the Middle East.
Knowing that multiple congressional committees are looking into this right now, and Admiral Frank Bradley has been identified as the man who made that order. We're going to unpack all of this, bring you analysis as you would expect here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio, Satellite Radio, Channel 121, live on YouTube and Bloomberg Originals. But first, we want to check on Wall Street, see how the Tuesday trade is going. Charlie Pellet has the latest on the markets for us in New York. Charlie, it's only Tuesday, but at least we're going in the right direction.
Indeed, right direction for the bulls, Joe Matthew. The Dow, the S&P, Nasdaq, they're all advancing right now. We're looking at a 25-point gain on the S&P 500 index. A sense of caution, though, prevailing. We've got the S&P up 0.4% right now. The Dow rebounding by 0.5%, making up some of yesterday's loss, higher by 254 points. Nasdaq up by about 0.8%. The Nasdaq 100 index also up 0.8%, and our Mag 7 index up 0.5%. The 10-year at 4.09%, with the 2-year 3.52%. Gold is now down $40 the ounce, declining almost 1%. 41.92 on the precious metal. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.6%, 58.98 a barrel. Bitcoin was down almost 8% yesterday. Today rebounding now by 6.3%. Bitcoin very close to 92,000. Bitcoin right now 91,900 on Bitcoin. Sources tell Bloomberg the Trump administration is poised to announce new fuel efficiency standards for automobiles and a bid to undo requirements. It is a sale for driving up the cost of new cars. CEOs of Jeep maker Stellantis, along with GM and Ford, plan to attend a White House event tomorrow. Again, this according to sources. GM shares up 0.6%, Ford down 1.2%, and Stellantis up by 1.9%. So again, recapping here, Bitcoin rebounding up 6.3%. S&P up 0.4%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. And back to go to Washington. Balance of Power continues right now. Once again, your host, Joe Mann.
All right, Charlie, many thanks. Charlie will have more on the markets coming up here as we connect the dots. as always, between Washington and Wall Street, keeping our eyes on crypto. And of course, still in the throes of earnings reporting season, we'll be looking at CrowdStrike and others after the bell. Good chunk of time listening to the president. There's a live view if you're with us on YouTube. The president and his Secretary of War, as he likes to call Pete Hegseth, speaking to a number of issues, including the latest scandal, if I can use that word, to rock Washington. This has to do with what Tim Kaine, the Democratic senator from Virginia, calls a war crime, allegedly, that this administration carried out in the Caribbean by shooting not one, but 2 missiles at an alleged drug boat, having seen 2 survivors in the water. The Washington Post said that was Pete Hegseth. The secretary delivered a kill-them-all order. The press secretary has changed that narrative. As we learned yesterday, an admiral by the name of Frank Mitch Bradley, in fact, carried out the second strike. And he's already got an invitation to testify before congressional committees. These guys are not waiting around. Senior House and Senate inquiries continuing here. They've already interviewed Pete Hegseth himself, Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Raisin Kane, and next, of course, will be the Admiral. We understand that will be on Thursday here in Washington, D.C. So this story is not over, and we want to spend a little bit of time with Wendy Benjaminson, Bloomberg's senior editor, with us in Washington. Wendy, this is a pretty fast-moving story. Just 24 hours ago, it looked like the Secretary of Defense could be at great risk once again, and now we're hearing that Admiral Bradley could be a scapegoat. What is he in for?
Well, he is the one who carried out or ordered other people to carry out the order. And while you're absolutely right, and 24 hours ago, you and I were sitting right here talking about it.
Yeah.
But yesterday, we had the Washington Post report that Hegseth ordered the kill-them-all strategy. The New York Times today is out with a story that has also 5 or 6 anonymous sources saying, not quite, he had given the order to conduct the strike and to make sure that there were that any narco terrorists were destroyed, as well as the cargo and the boat.
Okay.
So what they're saying now is the admiral carried out that order to make sure the entire thing was destroyed. But killing civilians who are clinging to ship wreckage is long time naval war crime. I mean, you just cannot do that. Going back to the British Navy and before, you do not kill men who are clinging to, pieces of wood in the sea. And this admiral presumably would know that. On the other hand, he was carrying out, this Times story says, the orders from the defense secretary, which presumably would have been approved by the commander-in-chief, but it was Donald Trump. But at this point, essentially, the White House's position is Hegseth did everything right, and this admiral carried out an order, which is sort of creating a scapegoat so that Pete Hegseth can keep his job and they can discipline this admiral or run him out.
What you make of the optics just there? Put him right next to him.
Right next to the president.
Right shoulder.
It really was a measure of a symbol of the president's confidence in him.
He was either going left or right. It could have been
Right.
Hegseth or Rubio.
Exactly.
Who's been kind of in a different orbit when it comes to a lot of things, from Venezuela to Ukraine. So Pete Hegseth got the treatment today. You wonder if, like I said, if we go to questions here, we'll dip back in, because that won't be pretty, right?
Right. No, it won't. And
he's in a mood today. He's been castigating the fake news and questioning IQ levels in the room already.
Right. He really doesn't like being faced with all of these scandals at once. And, notably.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take C60. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. You can get C60 in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. C60 has to be in a lipid, in oil form, for proper absorption. Take it every day, take a teaspoon a day. And what this will do is soak up free radicals, bring down stress in a cell and in your tissue, help the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more energy, your cell will perform better. Also, by soaking up free radicals, your tissues will heal. You'll have better immune system and endocrine system. You'll even have better brain function, because by soaking up the free radicals at the neural level, at the neuron level, then your mitochondria will be improved. You'll have more ATP. You'll produce more neurotransmitters. You'll have, over time, better neuroplasticity. You'll think better. You'll have better memory. Soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, will reduce plaque formation, and C60 will help your skin. At the basal layer of your skin, that's where you produce new skin cells. That will be healthier, there'll be less stress, and your skin will improve. If you take C60 regularly, in 2 months, you're going to start feeling that your immune system, your energy levels, your endocrine system are better. When you take C60 for 1 year, you're going to visibly see the difference. You will look younger. So please go to my store, get the C60, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And if you follow my protocol, you will slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Now, you can either invest in your body by taking the supplements and stacking them the way I'm telling you to, or most likely what will happen is when you get older, you're going to be spending more money on healthcare. It's up to you. If you don't want to follow my advice, don't. But most likely you're going to have problems when you're older. Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients that will help to slow down the aging process and target different systems of your body. It's a very complex and comprehensive compound profile. Shown on the screen, you can read the label on my website. This will help with brain function, musculature, energy levels, metabolism will be supercharged, and help with your cardiovascular health. And you take this regularly, you'll have vitality, you'll have more energy, you'll want to be more active, and you'll be slowing down the aging process. This is one of the pillars to my anti-aging protocol. Take it every day. This is a month supply. It's magical. In 72 hours, you're going to start noticing the difference. You're going to have more energy, more vitality. You're going to want to be more active. And by being more active, that will be additional positive feedback loop to slowing down the aging process. On top of taking the nutrients that are in here that will target better cardiovascular health, better musculature, better brain function. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. That's the broadcast for today. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Be prepared for the winter season and slow down the aging process. Stack these great supplements that I have and target these different systems and slow down the aging process. For the ones that don't know, it's really simple. It's a holistic approach. Stack the supplements, get proper sleep, do the 4 modalities of exercise, which are stretching, balancing, resistance training, and cardio. You want about 65% of your workout to be resistance training, about 35% cardio. But make sure you do stretching and balancing exercises and activate that cerebellum. Stay away from processed foods, drink filtered water, learn new things, get proper sleep. This is a holistic approach that does slow down the aging process. You don't need all these fancy pharmacopoeia medications, all right? You have to invest in your body to get healthy. It's super important because if you don't, you will have problems when you get older. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.